Hello and welcome to live coverage of the Apex Gaming Lorcana Invitational Qualifier. That's the TCG Player Invitational coming up on October 20th. I'm Tandy, joined by Mason Clark. Say hi, Mason.
Hi, Mason.
There it is. I love that. All right, so today we have 27 players all vying for their slot into the TCG Player Invitational on October 20th weekend. That's a 16-person invite only $5,000 event. Mason, you're going to be in the event. Why don't you tell us what you're looking forward to about the event itself?
Well, I mean, Lorcana is so much fun, so I can't wait to play against a bunch of other really skilled players from, open qualifiers like today and other card games around the world. And all of us getting to kind of come there and play and share the experience is going to be a blast. Plus, a little bit of high stakes is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, so in today's event, we are going to be playing 5 rounds of Swiss of Lorcana Constructed, and then we're going to be moving to top 8. And after the top 8 rounds, we're going to be crowning a champion. That person will earn $500 cash I believe it's $500 cash, as well as an invite to the TCG Player Invitational that we're going to be running at Apex Gaming on that October 20th weekend. The players that we have in the feature match area for round 1, we're going to be watching Brad Marsh on Amber Emerald Agro playing against Franklin Folk, someone who we know from the Apex Magic Tournament series, playing the big bad of the format, Ruby Amethyst Control.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see sort of how these decks play out. Ruby Amethyst has sort of been the de facto by players of, hey, if your deck can't beat this, you're going to struggle. And I'm really excited to see how Bradley attacks this problem.
All right, well, these players are underway and we don't want to hold them up. So they are already well into the game. It's game number 1 on your left, Franklin Folks with the big bad, Ruby Amethyst Control. Bradley Marsh on your right with that Amber Emerald Aggro. We have Gaston, and that's going to be facing off against a Flynn Rider. Turn 3 for Franklin Folks, and we're going to get a little bit frisky with the Maleficent Sorceress and draw a card.
Yeah, and one of the things you're going to see with this Ruby Amethyst control deck is it plays a couple creatures early that provide some incidental value just to sort of smooth itself out and bridge to the mid game where it really starts to take over.
All right, Flynn Rider, a very powerful aggressive card because it does quest for 2 lore and it only costs 2 to play. Now, it only has 1 strength with that 2 willpower, so it does get challenged by goons, but if they do challenge it, they have to discard a card.
Yeah, this is kind of the thing you see with a lot of the emerald creatures is they have high lore values and some sort of thing that's like, hey, if you want to interact with me, it's going to be a little bit hard. So Flynn Rider here is a great example of if you're going to attack down a Flynn Rider and challenge it down, it is going to cost you a card in hand, which is a pretty big deal, especially in the early game.
Well, this is a big turn for Bradley Marsh. We are going to cast just in time. This is going to allow us to play a 5-drop from hand 2 turns ahead of schedule. This is a very common play in the Emerald and Amber aggro decks because Emerald has so many powerful 5-drops. But here comes the Bodyguard Horse.
Maximus, yeah, this is one of the best bodyguard creatures in Lorcana right now. A bodyguard, so it has to get attacked first as a 4 strength, 5 willpower creature with the ability that when it can support to give its power to something else. So helps you challenge down other cards, which is very good in this game.
Yeah, the 5 willpower on the Maximus also means that Gaston can't trade for it straight up, which means that the Flynn Rider should be able to continue questing unchallenged over the next few turns, unless Franklin Folks can set up some big swingy 2-turn sequence.
Yep. We do see Franklin develop another Maleficent here. And, with the Reckless ability, Gaston is going to have to attack. So this is a turn where Franklin is going to probably answer the Maximus on board, but at the cost of 2 of his cards. And that is exactly what Bradley is wanting.
All right, well, we're going to go Friends on the other side off of the Maleficent that was already in play. And then this Gaston's got to run headfirst into this Maximus. But it is not going to take it down. It's only going to get 4 damage on it, so it's down to 1 willpower, and it looks like Franklin Folks is done, maybe in more ways than one. Bradley Marsh readies everything, and now we're going to go questing. First, we're going to ink a Moana, and then tapping 4. No, balk. We have a Hades in hand. Hades can't get back anything yet this turn, unless Bradley wants to go ahead and aggressively trade with Maximus.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, it does look like Bradley's decided maybe to hold off on that and instead play a Hans here. But yeah, it could have traded there, which cards like Friends on the Other Side would be pretty beneficial. But I like Bradley's sort of approach here. My job is to win the game and get to 20, and I'll let Franklin take care of killing things. The game's gonna go long. I'm not in a rush here.
Yeah, after questing with both, that Hans does come down and it does quest for 3, so it's pretty dangerous, a very aggressive but low statted card. And now Franklin Folks, we're going to go back his way and see if he can come back here. He actually inks a Maui hero to all. And here
Yeah,
we're gonna,
that
and then we got a trade. Maleficent going to knock down the Maximus, finally finishing it off.
yeah, looks like Maleficent's gonna attack in here. Franklin's debating it. Oh, actually, sorry, it's French on the other side.
Yeah, I saw another Maui here tall in hand, so maybe going to go ahead and get that one down and eat the Flynn, discarding a card. But with a grip full, it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, Franklin is not in the perfect place right now for how this game has gone, but is, starting to stabilize the board a little bit, and Bradley isn't so far ahead on lore that it's uncatchable here for Franklin.
All right, Flynn forces the discard. Maui only takes a damage, still has 4 willpower left. That big Maui hero to all is one of Ruby's primary tools for interacting with the aggressive decks.
Yeah, Maui is really one of the cards that allows this deck to exist. It is sort of the perfect early game play, and so often 2-for-1 your opponent answers some incredibly problematic card. We're going to see things probably like Cusco here from Bradley. That's a pretty popular Emerald card, and having a Maui that can attack it down is very crucial to winning.
All right, we're going to lead off with the Moana. This does quest for 3. Han's also questing for 3, but I'm curious if Bradley wants to expose it to the easy attack from Maui. This Moana says, we can fix it whenever this character quests. You may ready your other princess characters. They can't quest for the rest of this turn. And it does have 6 willpower, so it's quite large. Hans, go ahead and quest for 3. Bradley Marsh up to 8, looking to get to 20 as quickly as possible.
Yep. And that is a big sort of common trend in these Amber Emerald decks is when they kind of combine together, you're definitely trying to play a shorter game and get to 20 as soon as possible. And actually the antithesis here of Ruby Amethyst control, which sometimes wins just by decking your opponent.
All right, we're going to go ahead and use Maui to eat the Hans. Still has 1 willpower remaining, so still can trade with 1 more character. And here's Dragon Fire. This is going to knock off that Moana before it can quest, and Bradley Marsh is in some pain.
Yeah, Bradley's going to need something pretty big here to start to stabilize because Franklin still has a full grip of cards in hand, I believe 5. So it's going to be tough from this point.
All right, Marsh thumbing through a hand that looks pretty strong, has a Stitch Rockstar, which could bail him out, has a Hades, which he can play and get back a 2-drop like Flynn Rider and play it as long as he inks that Stitch in hand. I'm curious what he wants to do. My guess is you ink Moana and then play Stitch Rockstar, but it looks like Bradley just gonna value having those big questers here and gonna go ahead and play that Moana.
Yeah, this is a really tough decision point, and this is the moment Bradley's going to look back on. It's hard to know which exactly, but I do kind of like the idea of I need to be getting this done quickly, so I'm just going to put a 3 lore in play and hope that that's good enough for now.
Yeah, maybe try to ink some more useless card later on instead of inking your Moana, which is able to quest for so much. 7 ink and a pass from Franklin Folks. No defense and no offense. Just a quest for 1. And Bradley Marsh, maybe this was the opening he needed.
Yeah,
Charles just in time. Not the greatest in this hand, though.
I would say that's not in time here.
All right, Moana going to quest for 3, and what that's going to do is going to put him up to 11, but now Franklin Folks can use that Maui to finish it off, effectively trading 3 characters for just 1, which is indicative of just how good Maui is against these aggressive decks.
Agreed. And
all right,
got a Hades.
Yeah, this Hades is going to come down, and we'll see what he wants to get back.
Yeah. Looks like we're just getting the other copy of Moana.
Yep, just going to keep questing for 3, putting Franklin on the back foot, forcing answers over and over again.
And we are, just 3 copies of, if you just quest 3 more times, you will win. So there is some amount of force that has to happen here from Franklin's side, who we saw last turn didn't really want to do anything, right? Kind of just pass the turn. And that's sort of the downfall of these Ruby Amethyst controls sometimes is that you are preparing to play these super duper long games, but your opponent might not be doing the same and you just sort of end up in an awful position.
All right, so it looks like we're going to play big 8-drop Elsa. We're going to freeze both characters on the other side, which leaves them vulnerable to being challenged. And now the board is clear for Franklin Folks with that big 8-drop Elsa on the table. Back Bradley Marsh's way.
Yeah, another thing that interesting happened last turn is Hades was traded off, which currently doesn't matter too much. But if the game goes long, we might see Bradley just have Hades pick up Hades and basically threaten to do a damage every single turn. If the Hades doesn't get attacked, it does another quest. If it does get attacked, we just get Hades back.
Yeah, it turns out it's pretty hard to kill the Lord of the Underworld.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go back Franklin Folks way. Ruby Amethyst only has one lore, but commanding amount of resource control here. We'll see if he can keep things like Stitch Rocks off the table, and we do! Maleficent Monstrous Dragon comes down and eats the powerful 6-drop Amber card. Elsa questing for 3 back Bradley Marsh's way.
Yeah, and that was the turn Franklin needed. We needed to impact the board, start putting Bradley on a clock, and answer that Stitch, which was going to be a hard thing for anything except the Maleficent Dragon.
All right. Gonna just in time putting in a Moana and playing the Flynn Rider we got back from the Hades earlier.
Yeah. If we do get back to our turn, that is going to put us to 16, which is in striking distance. So Franklin is going to need to do something sooner than later.
Well, I'm not sure he has much of a choice because here comes another 8-drop Elsa. Both of these characters now exerted, and you're going to see Franklin Folks start to chew him up a little bit, but also start questing. No, we're going to trade off everything. Elsa going to eat the Flynn Rider. This is going to be a forced discard, and Be Prepared goes to the graveyard.
Yeah, and I think Bradley is top decking here, no cards in hand.
Never the place you want to be against old Ruby Amethyst control, huh?
Not
Here's
exactly.
a one cost Lilo is the draw from Bradley Marsh. Feels about as good as Amon's Goblin Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's a magic mirror, the powerful item for the mirror match, but here it's just going to keep Franklin Folks in business, finding more juice over the next few turns. It's only going to take a few turns of questing to end this game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think if Franklin just quests here for 8, goes to 12, and is presenting lethal on the next turn, and Bradley's going to have to do something big about it.
Yeah, and there's just nothing in the deck that stops this, right? So, yeah, 5 cost, Mad Hatter, you're just going to quest for 2 up to 13, but when Franklin Folks gets to go back to his turn, the game's over. And Bradley Marsh sees the writing on the wall, packs it in. That's game number 1 to Franklin Folks' Ruby Amethyst control. A powerful start from Bradley Marsh's Amber Emerald aggro deck. That just in time into an early Maximus to protect his early characters was quite good, but very much lacking the 1-drop Lilo early in the game to really apply extra pressure. Utilizing, that aggressive curve perhaps should be mulliganing pretty hardcore to find those early Lilos, especially in this matchup against Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah, Bradley had a pretty good start, but with these sort of decks, you really want to use all of your ink every single turn in the early turns because your deck isn't really set up to go long, right? We saw in that game how it went long while Franklin didn't use all of the ink in the early turns. Ultimately was using more ink more effectively in the late game. Bradley, not the same thing. So 1, 2, 3 is a really good thing to look for if you're trying to play an aggressive deck. You might have some cards that's really tempting in your hand, like Maximus, but it's often better just to have a Lilo and get, that 2-4 lore in early is honestly a make or break moment in a lot of these games.
All right, big shout out to Mox Flip for the Prime sub while we were playing that game. Appreciate the support. If you have a Prime sub lying around and you don't want to watch ads and you'd like to support Apex Gaming and our endeavors to provide you with competitive card games, make sure to use that Prime sub on us. We'd really appreciate it. If you haven't followed already, make sure you do. We're going to be playing lots of Lorcana tournaments on this channel in the near future.
Yeah, there's one on the 14th of October, right? And then also there's 2 on the 20th LCQs to play in the 16-person invitational with players like myself, Nathan Sawyer, Frank Karsten. So it's going to be a really fun time. You definitely want to come out and play one of these events.
Yeah, I've been working really hard to set this event up with Apex Gaming, and we got TCG Player on board to sponsor the event, and now it's the TCG Player Invitational hosted by Apex Gaming, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great weekend. That's going to be October 20th weekend. We're going to be playing that event, and this Invitational Qualifier actually qualifies for that event, but the players are ready for game number 2. So let's head on down to the feature match area and watch the early turns to see if there's any Lilos to start, for one.
Yeah, it looks like Bradley's tanking on the mulligan here. Maybe just putting back everything but one card. This is
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
what we talked about, and I love it. If we don't like, I would not be shocked if that card is Lilo in hand, and we're just like, yeah, these aren't my aggressive early cards. Let's just try and curve out and run over Franklin before he gets to his big late game cards.
All right, so both players pretty heavily, aggressively mulliganing. I'm of the camp that you should just keep a bunch of the hands that just have inkables. But I think that it changes when you're an aggressive deck. You just absolutely need to play a 1-drop, and then if you don't play a 2-drop on top of that, or another 1-drop with something else attached to it, oftentimes you're just a little too slow against the control decks.
Yeah, I agree. I think with a deck like Ruby Amethyst or maybe like Sapphire Steel, just having a bunch of inkable cards and some stuff you can kind of do early, that's pretty good. But like we mentioned before with Amber Emerald, you're gonna need to have those fast starts because you have built your deck in such a way that you just won't really do much when we hit to turn 8 forward. So you need to have those early turns maximized. And we do see that with Lilo here, the best 1-drop in the game.
Yeah, here is Lilo on turn 1, and I know Bradley Marsh has at least one, and I think he has 2 more copies. So this might be a really fast one. Triple Lilo start. Does Franklin have any answers? Desperately needs to get down some sort of character on 2 to challenge these, whether it's Gaston, maybe even just a magic broom.
Yeah,
Here it is.
Maybe Franklin can stitch something together.
Yeah. Here's the Gaston to potentially challenge these Lilos, but triple Lilo start is impressive. Here's a just in time. Cusco down on turn 3. This is a net draw from Bradley Marsh. We're already up to 8 lore. It's just turn 3.
Yeah, I think Bradley has the win if he can untap with Cusco and 2 Lilos next turn. So Franklin's immediately on the back foot, and we talked about this in the early turns. Franklin's deck has some cards to interact with some creatures, but nothing really over the moon. We really need to get to 5 mana and have cards like Maui clean up. Franklin is in a really tough spot here.
Yeah, I was hoping he'd have something like Rafiki to challenge these Lilos. Instead, just has another Gaston. And Bradley Marsh, we're going to go back his way, and he's going to keep the pressure on. I see a Flynn Rider in hand. I see a Mad Hatter in hand. The Flynn can come down here and quest for 2. The Cusco can quest for 3. Bradley Marsh able to get all the way up to 15 lore this turn and threatening a bunch more next turn still.
Yeah, and Bradley's like, all right, well, first things first, 7 lore. I'm going to do that no matter what. Now let's figure out exactly which of these cards I want to play.
Yeah, personally, I think it's Flynn Rider. The difference between 2 and 3 lore at this point is low. And if you just can play one versus not play one and have to ink the other, maybe the question is, do I ink the Mad Hatter? But Bradley going to disagree and go ahead and ink that 2-drop Flynn Rider, and we're going to go back Franklin Folks' way. Maybe that was the window he needed to claw back into this game. These Gastons can do some damage. Cusco going to get eaten by a Gaston, and then Gaston's going to chew up one of those Lilos as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cusco Ward 2 sort of has to have a card like Gaston, like Maui to clear it up. But also, Cusco always sort of gets his man by killing whatever kills it. So,
all right, Bradley Marsh up to 15 lore. Maybe going to regret not playing the Flynn Rider last turn, but we do get Mad Hatter down. We're up to 17 lore, and Franklin Folks needs a direct way to remove every 3 lore character. Let's see if he can do it.
yeah, and this is what we talked about, that early strength start from Bradley. Now that we've done this, for the rest of the game, we have to have an answer spell for every single creature with 3 lore. And heaven forbid we get more lore and make it so we have to answer everything. So a lot of pressure on Franklin to end this game and take control.
All right, here comes Gaston trading with the Lilo. Do we have Dragonfire to get this Mad Hatter off the table? If not, the game is over. It quests for 3. Bradley Marsh at 17 lore.
Yeah, and
backs it in.
That is sort of the start, and that's why we saw Bradley keep just 1 card and mulligan 6 other cards. Bradley had the Lilo and just was looking for more powerful starts and got basically the best start you can ask for.
Yeah, triple Lilo start into just in time Cusco. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that. He used almost every single one of his resources in the opening turns and, decided to ink the Flynn Rider on turn 4 so that he could start setting up for those 5-drop triple lore generators setting at 17 lore. So heads up play from Bradley there ultimately ended up with him winning the game.
Yeah, I think it was thinking back on it. Bradley sort of knows Rafiki isn't in hand, right? Rafiki would have been played the turn prior, and
Right.
that's the like one way that we could cleanly answer the Lilo. So he's just saying, Franklin, hey, you got to draw Rafiki. Most people play like 2, 3 of those. So good luck. If you don't, I have you kind of in checkmate, and it worked out perfectly. And that is sort of what we're seeing from these players.
Now, we do have some sponsors here to shout out. First of all, thank you so much to TCG Player. Check out tcgplayer.com for all of your TCG needs. Their marketplace is the best in the business. Whether you're looking for Magic singles or Lorcana singles, make sure to head on to tcgplayer.com. Also, shout out to G Fuel Energy Formula for keeping us energized on these long days. Thank you so much to Ultimate Guard for giving us awesome swag bags to give to our invitational top 8s. We've been working with them in all of our Magic events, and we hope to continue working with them for our Lorcana events. We're very excited about that, and they are too. These players are getting ready here for game number 3 of our first match. We're playing 5 rounds of Swiss in top 8 all today. We're going to bring you live coverage of all these rounds. Game's looking good so far.
Agreed. And yeah, we see Bradley once again just kept one card in hand, probably a 1-drop. Maybe it's a Simba. That's a card that you could maybe potentially keep, instead of a 1-drop. But I like this aggressive mulligan there. And then you saw Franklin, I think it kind of did what you talked about there, Todd, with keeping like 3 cards in hand that look to all just be inkable things that you can play early if you need to. And you do need to play things early against this Bradley Marsh's Amber Emerald deck.
Yeah, so Amber Emerald, specifically the just-in-time combo for the 5-drops, you have Cusco and you have Mad Hatter. Those being 3 lore generators and relatively difficult to get off the table. If you try to challenge Mad Hatter, you usually get to draw cards, sometimes 2. If you try to challenge Cusco, it banishes the character that's challenging it, but also it has ward. So just in time for any of these cards early is often very problematic for the opposing decks. We'll see if Bradley Marsh has that powerful 3-drop here for game number 3.
Yep. Yeah, Franklin's going to really value cards like Gaston to answer Cusco in the early turns. And so far, we've seen Franklin have a Gaston every game, but we'll see how it plays out this time.
All right, no Goon on turn 1 for Franklin Folks, perhaps not playing them. The deck lists are private. Bradley Marsh here, going to lead off with that powerful Lilo, looks like, after inking a Stitch.
Yeah, we inked a 1-drop, which if you're the opponent and your opponent does that with their aggro deck, you're like, uh-oh, Gaston.
Here's Gaston. This can challenge a Simba if that's the 2-drop from Bradley Marsh. The Lilo can quest for 2, but is threatening to be eaten straight up by the Gaston. Both Stitches down now in the Inkwell, Stitch Rockstar and the new dog. Here's Flynn Rider.
Yeah.
Back Folks' way. We're going to not be able to challenge anything with this Gaston. Can't quest with it either. But we do have Maleficent Sorceress and draw a card.
Yeah, and this is what we saw game 1 in this matchup, was this exact same play pattern, but Bradley didn't have the Lilo, and the Lilo will matter. So if we can put something like Maximus in play here off just in time or something this turn, that could be the difference that we make, because it was dangerously close there for Bradley, just was a little bit short in game number 1. So we have to see what we have in hand this turn. So it looks like we're eyeballing a Stitch.
Yeah, I think the Stitch is going to be ink. He has just in time floating around in the back. I'm not 100% that he has a 5-drop, but I thought I saw Mad Hatter as well. We'll just see how he wants to sequence. I see Hatter, I see Lilo, and I see just in time. So it seems like that's what's going to be the play, but Bradley might have other plans.
Yeah, and I like this. Just taking a second, we have plenty of time. Game 1 and 2 were very fast, and let's just double check that we want to put in the right thing off just in time. And do we want to sort of maybe throw away this Lilo to get in some more now? Because Franklin's deck does have ways to answer things without getting into combat. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the Ruby Amethyst control prides itself on being able to interact with opposing characters pretty well. Whether it's directly via Dragon's Fire, whether it's controlling a large, size of the board via Be Prepared, or just challenging your opponent's stuff with Gaston and Maui Hero to All. Just a lot of ways to interact with opposing characters, which makes it such a powerful control deck. That combined with all that card draw.
Yep. We are seeing here a French on the other side sung, and looks like Franklin's just gonna develop to the board a little bit, getting Archimedes down.
Yeah, we're going to continue playing some defense here. Folks is going to spray the board. The second Maleficent and the Archimedes all threatening to challenge, and with Bradley Marsh not doing anything on turn 3, you have to imagine that he feels like he's fallen pretty far behind.
Yeah, skipping your turn 3 and not playing anything is always pretty rough in these Amber Emerald decks. It is extra rough when we have no lore going right now.
All right, here's the Hans. So the threat of being challenged often makes cards like Lilo and Flynn Rider a bit weaker, which is what makes the bodyguard mechanic so strong. And so since Bradley Marsh hasn't drawn a Simba and hasn't drawn a Maximus with that just in time, it seems like Franklin Folks is able to essentially just deploy an immense number of resources to protect himself.
Yeah, and it looks like Bradley was maybe trying to set up a Hans attack into something and then Rapunzel to draw cards, but Franklin's just going to Dragonfire down that Hans because he's in such a good position. He can sort of allow himself to do that where normally he couldn't.
All right, we're going to go ahead and quest for 3. Franklin Folk start pushing towards the win condition because Bradley Marsh is not pressuring that well. Here's a just in time, but we're already at the stage where we can start playing these 5 drops. So just in time gets a lot weaker after that initial burst on 3.
Yeah, and you see this happen a lot with cards where they have really high highs and really low lows. And, getting 2 extra ink on your turn can be good. We saw in game 1 how we were able to double cast some cards, but here we're not really able to use that extra ink that's floating around. So sort of a dead draw as we do ink a Mad Hatter.
Yeah, but that probably means we're playing another Mad Hatter, right?
It's got to be, yeah. Something good's coming down if Mad Hatter's going in the inkwell. If I was Bradley's opponent, I'd be like, oh no.
All right, so we're going to quest with Flynn Rider and the Lilo. That's going to give us 4 lore up to 4. And now we're going to go back Franklin Folks' way. He has the ability to challenge a lot of these characters. We'll see how he wants to do it because he can keep pushing towards that victory condition as well. Gaston likely going to jam into Flynn Rider, and then one of the Maleficents or Archimedes is going to go at the Lilo. Let's see what Franklin wants to do, though.
Yeah, Franklin's also in this interesting position where we have a Be Prepared in hand, which will clear the board up, but we're so far ahead on board that we just kind of don't care about it right now as we are playing the Magic Mirror and honestly probably just going to draw a card.
Yeah, so we're in a commanding position here, and many of our payoff cards cost more than 6. So we're just in a weird spot usually on Ink 6 and Ruby Amethyst Control, where the Mirror plus draw card is an ideal play. But Franklin Folk's going to utilize that card advantage over the course of the game to bury Bradley Marsh with his, relatively quick start, but no protection. And Franklin Folk's able to just directly challenge it via Gaston and these cheap characters.
Mm-hmm. I also love what Franklin's doing here. We made sure to draw our card first. If we're going to do that this turn, let's start there. Especially with Flynn Rider in play, we're going to have to discard something if we decide to attack it down. So let's make sure we have all the information we can, sort of plan through everything. And we saw Franklin do that here where, we took our second, we thought through our turn, now we're executing. And I love to see type play like that.
Yeah, and we're going to discard the Rafiki here. Maybe his time is past. Holding on to a second copy of Be Prepared in hand.
Yeah, it looks like Franklin's really valuing if something comes down that can clear stuff up, having sort of a buyout clause and, not the end of the world.
So now Bradley Marsh, though, does get to set up a really strong Rapunzel turn. We're going to put 4 damage on the Moana and then heal 3 of it and draw 3 cards. This is going to give him the resource burst he needs, maybe to get back in this game.
Yeah.
Handful of 5 drops now. Going to ink one of them. But now it has a grip full, and we're going to go back Franklin Folks' way.
That Rapunzel was the thing we needed. I don't know if there was any other card that we could play that turn that would get us back into a position where we can maybe get out of this. Drawing 3 there and answering the Gaston was a great turn for Bradley. I think anything else, it might have just almost been over already.
All right, there's a slight mishap on the graphics. Bradley Marsh, I believe, should be at 4 lore from questing last turn. He did gain 2 with the Flynn and the Lilo. Our spotter there must have missed it, but we'll get that fixed for you in just a minute once we confirm. Here now, Franklin Folks has a choice. We can send everything into the mana for 6, and that's what he's going to do. A damage on each of the small characters, and one of the Maleficents goes to the banish zone. What do we call in the graveyard? I don't know what to call it. Banish zone, graveyard, whatever.
It's called
Discard
the
pile.
discard pile, I believe.
All right,
Yeah,
discard pile. That's the one.
I'm gonna call it the Disney Vault.
The vault. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Scrooge McDuck's in there with his millions of gold coins just swimming around.
Ravensburg's watching, like, write that down, write that down. Scrooge McDuck graveyard card. Yeah.
All right, Bradley Marsh, back his way. What do you want to do? If you try to challenge anything, this Aladdin Heroic Outlaw is going to chew you up.
Yeah, and Aladdin Heroic Outlaw is the card that I think helps stabilize the most out of these Ruby Amethyst decks in the mid game against these early aggressive decks. When you get to kill something and then take 2 of their lore and add it to yours, it's an amazing swing. And this card also has the ability to shift it with the early Aladdin, the Street Robber. So this card is going to be a huge headache for Bradley because we basically have to answer the Aladdin, or any lore we get is going to sort of be undone immediately. And you're going to have to work through it somehow. So
All right, so the Rapunzel should have 2 damage on it as well because it did challenge a 2 strength character. It's weird. The damage doesn't matter that much in this game because most of the time things just get eaten immediately. But when you're compounding like multiple little things together, it does matter quite a bit. So we'll try to get that fixed for you. We'll also try to get the lore counter fixed for you.
yep, we are on top of this. Goofy Bodyguard comes down. Ahoy! Huh.
All
Franklin
right.
considering the turn, figuring out exactly how we want to play it.
Has a Maui here, tall in hand. Can use that to eat up the bodyguard since it does have 6 willpower. Here it comes. The 6/5. Let's get Maui here tall on the screen because I think that this is likely the best card in the Ruby Amethyst control deck for matchups like this. Not only does it have Rush, but it has 6 strength, 5 willpower. It is often trading for 2 different characters. And here comes Aladdin. That's going to chew up the Rapunzel. We're going to steal 2 lore and gain 2 lore. This Heroic Outlaw is the bane of the aggro decks once it comes down and is able to start challenging.
Yeah, I mentioned a second ago how Heroic Outlaw Aladdin there does such a good job of like punishing you from doing anything. Cards like Maui are why you're able to play these late game cards that are so strong. If we didn't have things like Maui, we probably couldn't make it to this point in the game in the first place. And so, yeah, Aladdin's good, but if you can't get there, it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, that's exactly it, right? And Maui being that early interaction, like turn 5 is not early. You need something like Gaston's, like Franklin Folks did. But once you get to the mid game, something like Maui is able to chew up these really high willpower characters that you're seeing Bradley Marsh play and survive. And that is truly the difference.
Agreed. As we do see, it looks like Bradley drew Cusco for turn, is deciding whether to play Cusco or maybe play 2 different cards instead.
I think he's maybe thinking about just in time into a 5-drop plus a 3 or 4-drop on top of it, but I don't think that he has enough resources. So it looks like we're just going to play another 5. Has a Goofy Bodyguard in hand, the Musketeer.
It's so awkward too because we mentioned damage sticking, like it matters, but so often things just kind of die in big chunks in this. The fact you have an Archimedes in play, if we play Goofy Bodyguard and we were to like bodyguard it up, we would just attack the Archimedes and attack the Aladdin, and then we'd be at 0 lore to Franklin's 10. So we kind of have to play this card in a non-intuitive way.
Yeah, Heroic Outlaw makes any sort of action from your opponent that exerts their characters quite punishing because anything that he challenges and banishes, it will allow him to steal 2 lore from the opponent while gaining 2 lore himself. We're going to start with drawing a card from Magic Mirror. Franklin Folks finds Magic Broom. Do you want to ink that, or do you want to get it onto the table and maybe start questing yourself?
Yeah, and we're going to see Franklin. I love that once again. Think through the turn, make sure that we're doing the right stuff, and then execute there. And this is the thing you'll notice: once the Ruby Amethyst deck gets to start drawing 2 cards a turn with Magic Mirror, that's when things are really starting to get out of hand. So Bradley needs to get stuff going now if he wants to stabilize and win this game.
All right, folks, going to go ahead and quest for 3 up to 11. We'll see if Marsh has any interest in challenging or just wants to quest himself. Maybe he doesn't want to do anything. It's hard Hard to get this Aladdin off the table. Hard to race 11 lore. And I know Folks has at least a Maleficent Monstrous Dragon in hand that can challenge the next big play from Bradley Marsh, as long as that play is not Cusco.
Cusco is a big part of the recipe for typically winning in these games. We saw in game number 2 how Bradley sort of got to 17 and said, all right, answer my Mad Hatter or lose. If that had been a Cusco, it just would have been over. There just would not have been an option to do anything different.
All right, we're going to put 5 damage on the Goofy Musketeer, and that's going to leave Aladdin with 1 willpower left. Here comes Stitch Rockstar. Maybe something that can get Bradley back into the game. We'll see if Folks wants to ignore it, but he'll probably play Monstrous Dragon this turn and blow it up.
Yeah, Franklin is a strong player who understands this is like the one thing that can maybe actually win. So if I have an answer to it, I'm probably just going to slam it immediately and not give them an out.
All right, here it is. Monstrous Dragon eats up Stitch Rockstar. Let's get Maleficent Monstrous Dragon on the screen. This is the biggest baddie in the game. 9 cost Ruby, 7/5. Quest for 2. When it comes on to the field, it banishes an opposing character. This is literally the pinnacle of control because it's the most expensive thing in the game.
Yeah. A lot of the in-game sort of, this is the thing you're playing, and then you just immediately turn the corner. Getting a big buy like this that can challenge down another creature, very important. And just having the 2 lore is like kind of nice for starting to turn the corner too. So huge card here.
All right, here's just in time for a Cusco and another just in time for a Mad Hatter. Well, maybe this is the start of something, but we're pretty close to finishing off the game. Let's see if Folks can take it down. Only a few more quests needed to get it done. Handful of interaction, though, so might not be able to cross the finish line, depending on what Bradley Marsh has next turn.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because Franklin's in a spot where we can just sort of play our cards and just be like, all right, lore, whatever. And what we saw Bradley do to Folks here in game 2 is going to happen the other way around. Where it's just, I'm going to just play things and you're going to have to answer all of them. And Bradley's deck is much worse than Folks' deck at doing that.
Yeah, this is a lot of the end games in Disney's Lorcana where you spend the first like 2 or 3 turns just jockeying for board position. And then once you stabilize, you just start questing like crazy and forcing your opponent to have an answer like every single turn. Now, back Bradley Marsh's way. Folks up to 17 lore, only needs 3 more. We can stop 2 of it by challenging this Maleficent, but we need some way to bounce or remove one of these other characters, or Franklin Folks is going to be your victor here in round number 1 of the first TCG player Invitational Qualifier for Disney's Lorcana. And that's it. Bradley Marsh packs it in. Franklin Folks 1-0. One of the superstars here at the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio, often crushes the Magic events that we have on this channel, but now dipping his toes into Disney's Lorcana, and he takes down game number 1. We do have a backup feature match for you. We're going to go ahead and move on over there and take a peek. On your left, we got Levi Love playing Ruby Amethyst Control, looks like, facing off against Randy Webbing, playing Amethyst Emerald Agro. We'll get all the things updated for you in just a moment, but we're going to get on into this game and see how these players are doing.
Yeah,
Randy, here, good.
I was gonna say Randy has double-digit lore. I know that because I saw it when he wrote it down. So he's in a good spot.
Yeah, and we have a Genie on the job, which is going to bounce that Aladdin. And bouncing the Aladdin means that he needs some sort of rush way or direct way to answer some of these characters. But with Pascal having evasion and Cusco having ward, it could be difficult. It might need something like Be Prepared right now.
Agreed. As we see, looks like just a handful of nothing. And Levi Love is taken down.
Yeah, we're not 100% on if that's game 2 or match, but these players here are still shuffling. So my guess is that we're going to get a game number 3, and once we get confirmation for that, we'll get everything reset and ready for game 3.
These Emerald decks are really interesting to me, Todd, where they are high lore and have pretty like frustrating elements to them, but it seems like it's really challenging to not only play them well, but to construct your deck well with them in mind.
Yeah, I really like Emerald as a color, but I think that they were very harsh in the way that they divvied up inkables and non-inkables. There's so many non-inkable powerful cards in Emerald that you often need to pair it with a color that has a lot of powerful cards that are inkable. Otherwise, you just have a lot of ink issues as the game progresses, stalling out on 3 or 4 sometimes when you're trying to curve.
Mm-hmm.
All right, players are drawing opening hands for game number 3. The games can go long, so these players, if they want to finish this match, likely need to play quickly. The Ruby Amethyst control deck has been the bane of the tournament organizer over the last few weeks, ending in so many unintentional draws. I don't want to get too into it yet because we are playing best of 3 today. But at some point, I would like to do a best of 1 tournament. I think best of 1 may be the superior format for this game because I think it's relatively difficult to finish 3 games with Ruby Amethyst in 50 minutes. I just think it takes a little too long.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens as players improve in Lorcana because
Right.
we're all learning it so much right now, and there are so many decisions. I think the thing that players underappreciate before they start playing Lorcana is just how many choices you have every single turn. Just from even your inking, right? Like you need to figure out, am I going to need this card in the mid game, or like can I afford to ink it now? And that little extra thing adds 5-10 seconds to a turn over and over and over again. And as we improve, it might be a thing that may be self-correct. But for right now, it does seem to be sort of a big problem for Mantis control players is pace of play.
All right, so we're here for game number 3. Levi Love inks a Mickey Brave Little Tailor. Back Randy Webbing's way. We're going to start off with a Pascal. This Pascal is a powerful 1-drop from Amethyst that allows you to be very aggressive early because it has pseudo-evasive. As long as you have another character, it's very difficult for your opponent to challenge it. They need to essentially clear your board or have an evasive character themselves, or else Pascal just threatens to gain a free lore every turn.
Yeah, and when you combine that with Emerald's creatures that have these annoying abilities, right? Like we have Flynn Rider, once again, we saw that in our first match today, but also things like Cheshire Cat, it becomes really hard to answer the Pascal early, which normally a 1/1 is just not that big a deal.
Ooh, no quest from Levi Love. Perhaps a small misstep, but we're going to go back Randy Webbing's way. It's oftentimes correct to quest when your opponent is also questing if you can't challenge them in reasonable ways. And I don't think there's many punishes for Emerald Amethyst aggro, so maybe just a missed one lore, no big deal. Here's
Yeah.
Maleficent Sorceress to draw a card, and we're going to go back Levi Love's way.
I wonder if Randy showed Rafikis in games 1 and 2, and Levi was really valuing being able to clear up this Pascal with maybe an interaction spell from hand.
Here's a Friends on the Other Side being sung by Aladdin. Looks like we're thumbing Rafiki and a couple of Be Prepared. We'll see if he's got the ink to play this turn. It looks like his hand is chock full of uninkables. This is maybe scary for Levi Love.
Yeah, I think Levi has Friends from the Other Side and Aladdin Heroic Outlaw as the 2 cards that are inkable, and those are both cards that players are pretty hesitant to ink, as we do see a Friends from the Other Side get played.
Yeah, and he's going to go ahead and cast that just to make sure that he's able to hold on to his powerful inkables for future turns. We'll see if this Archimedes has any interest in eating the Flynn Rider and discarding a card. My guess is yes. Flynn questing for 2 is quite scary.
Yeah, we have this Aladdin, we have this Be Prepared. We sort of just need to get there. So let's, take our lumps or whatever and get rid of the Flynn Rider.
All right. We're going to discard a Rafiki. One of the best cards against aggro decks, but we're entering a stage in the game where it's no longer viable compared to the rest of Levi's hand. We're going to trade Maleficent for Aladdin. That's going to keep the 7-drop Aladdin Heroic Outlaw from coming down early to challenge. And now we're going to play a Hans in Quest for 1. Pascal still protected.
I love that play from Randy there. It's very heads up. With the way your opponent's playing, they're very much thinking about something. This could be going on. What's the card that punishes me here? Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. Let's just trade that and not let that come down early. Because I could also just sing a Be Prepared, and it could be game over from Randy just off that.
All right, here's another Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. This is going to drain a lore from Randy. And we're going to give us another shift target for the big Aladdin. It looks like his hand is 2 Be Prepareds and 2 big Aladdins. Chooses not to ink anything this turn, I think, but I could have missed an ink earlier. Maybe ink the Maui.
It is hard with the black sleeves, black playmat. I don't know about you, but I've realized how old I am with my eyesight these days. When I look down, I'm like, how much ink do I have?
Yeah.
I gotta get a different playmat.
Black sleeves, black playmat's tough for Lorcana because you put them face down. In the game we normally play Magic the Gathering, you put the resources face up. They're a bit easier to tell apart from the rest of the cards. My guess is that we need to start using sleeves that just have some sort of symbol on the back of them, because I've been using clear sleeves and with the Lorcana cards, and the lore symbol on the back of the Lorcana cards actually looks really nice when you use clear sleeves.
It's nice. I like that idea a lot. So do you see Maleficent coming down? Randy planning out the turn here. I think this is second Pascal. Or
Yeah.
as the kids would say, combo.
All right, here's another Pascal. Does he want to ink anything to get up to 5? Going to ink a Mad Hatter, and we're going to quest for 4. That's going to put Randy Webbing up to 7, but Levi Love has the Shift Aladdin here to answer. Archimedes as the ink, and we shift. Here it comes. Heroic Outlaw going to be banging on the Hans. We're going to steal 2 lore, +2.
This 4-point swing is so big from the Aladdin. Just, Randy was in great position there that Hans was 3, but now, Levi's up to 3. Obviously, lore isn't the hugest thing for the Ruby Amethyst control deck, but it does matter. We saw in match number 1 where, we sort of stabilized a little bit, and then we just started aggressively luring ourselves and racing because we were up on board. So it does force an answer here from Randy as, we do see the Maleficent trade in and get a double lore from Pascal's.
All right, now these Rapunzels are the Pascals are protecting each other, but here is a Mad Hatter to give them 1 extra layer of protection. Levi Loves Way. We'll see what he can do. He drew Maleficent Sorceress for turn, can play that and be prepared to protect his lore count.
It feels like that is sort of the strongest thing Levi can do. Levi can quest up to 4, do that, and then we have another Aladdin to play on the next turn. And Randy is going to play cards into your Aladdin. So just getting this Be Prepared down now while there's something good that Aladdin can attack is a pretty tempting play. But Levi maybe baiting Randy a little bit here, getting the Aladdin down and saying, hey, do you want to develop to the board, and try and hit me in one big hit? Because if you do this, Be Prepareds are going to be back breaking.
If I'm Randy, I might just start questing with Pascal's only. Just leave the Mad Hatter, but it looks like he's getting really aggressive. Going to gain 5 lore, up to 12. And now we'll see if he wants to deploy another 5-drop. Levi Love can challenge the Mad Hatter. It'll draw Randy a card, though, so keep the gas coming.
Genie on the Job is in Randy's deck. We saw that in game number 2 when we jumped in. So maybe Randy's setting up something like that. Oh, as we do have a bounce spell.
Yeah, but that's actually going to end up kind of bad for Randy because it allows Levi to play that Be Prepared this turn. Could have done it last turn, basically in the same position, but Randy down a Mother Knows Best.
Yeah, and, we talked about how this worked out probably better for Levi because now we get to keep our Aladdin for later. The fact that Randy did get 5 lore is pretty huge here as, there we go. Let's quest first before we wipe the board. That could be the difference. If we draw a Cusco, we'd be at 15 or right around the corner. Things are getting pretty risky there for Levi. So hopefully it works out if you're a Levi fan.
All right, Randy's way. We're going to play another Mad Hatter. Go back Levi. Draws Rafiki for turn. Has Be Prepared, Aladdin, Outlaw in hand. Here it is. 7-drop Aladdin comes down, threatening that Mad Hatter. We'll see if Randy has another bounce spell to keep it in check.
Genie would be a huge... There's Genie!
Yeah, we're going to quest for 3, up to 15. Dangerously close to winning the game. Levi Love does have another Be Prepared in his hand, but this Emerald deck is very good at coming back from being hit with Be Prepared because all of their characters quest for so much lore individually. There it is. Bang. Both characters down. No ink.
We're seeing the difference here between Emerald Amethyst and Amber Amethyst, right? I'm sorry, Amber Emerald. Amber Emerald, a little bit more aggressive, but really kind of falls off in the mid game. Here, Randy being have more card draw means we can ink more things, we can keep playing, and we're not actually just stone cold dead to Be Prepared. Not that we exactly were in match number 1, but it was a much bigger blowout than it has been in this game.
All right, Randy deploys a 6-drop. That thing quests for 2. Not quite threatening lethal. We'll see if Levi has the answer. We're going to draw 2 cards with friends on the other side.
I'm trying to think of what Levi is looking for. Maybe it was a Dragonfire. We did have an Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, which would not answer the Mother Gothel on its own, but would have been a good start.
Yeah, normally Mother Gothel is great against opposing characters that want to quest. It's not that good against an opposing control deck, but it's still not that bad. It does quest for 2, and it's quite large, and it's inkable, so a lot to love about Mother Gothel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, no answer for it, so it's going to quest up to 17 here for Randy if he wants to. Looks like he has Genie on the job in hand, so that plus the Mother Gothel does threaten lethal outside of a third. Be prepared from Levi Love.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess Maleficent Dragon's like the one thing you kind of have to be afraid of, but you have so much lore at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it takes the whole turn, right? So if you're able to, maybe you want a Genie on the job that thing instead of the Rafiki here. Yeah, we're going to play Hans. So that's going to essentially have to bait the Maleficent Dragon, but then next turn, the Genie on the job essentially seals the deal without another Be Prepared.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing Levi here plan out the turn, trying Dino. Let's look at our top 2 cards, figure out what's coming up. And I love this. If you're going to be playing at your turn, you work with all the information you can and then go from there. If I have a card on top of the deck like another Maleficent, I might want to make a different play than if I have Ursula on top of my deck.
All right. What are we playing here? Inks, Aladdin Heroic Outlaw.
And if that's happening...
Yeah, here's Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, Hans down. Rafiki can't quest. Can only challenge for 3. Is it even worthwhile? I think the answer is no, so no quest, no attacks here. And that's why Mother Gothel's so good. It puts your opponent in a bind, and sometimes it just means that their stuff doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I wonder if we just had to attack the mother a little bit, so that if the dragon gets answered, or maybe it can't do something, then we can attack it down with another Rafiki. I'm unsure as Tinkerbell comes down.
Yeah, and this thing does have evasive, and so Levi needs to be able to directly answer it with Dragonfire or something similar, or else it's threatening lethal next turn. We can challenge the Mother Gothel with the Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. Straight up, eat it. Okay, Levi doing some manipulation with the Ursula's Cauldron.
And that is time in the round.
Yes, these players are going to get 5 total turns. And then if they are unable to finish the match, this is game number 3, so they will end in a draw. I've been trying to come up with fun ways to do tiebreakers when it comes to getting draws in this game. I'm going to try to have no draws when we do the Invitational in like 20 days or whatever. And I was thinking combining lore count and inkwell together as the tiebreaker. What do you think about that?
It really changes the dynamic of the Ruby Amethyst. I need to think about it a bit more, but it's an interesting solution for sure. So I think Levi's realizing, oh no. Yeah. And
all right. Can't do anything about it, and Tinkerbell being evasive is going to end it. Randy Webbing defeats Levi Love with Emerald Amethyst Agro. Those early creature or characters able to quest for high amounts of lore was a little too much for the big bad of the format, the Ruby Amethyst Aggro, or Ruby Amethyst Control. That's going to do it for round number 1. Mason, what do you think of the games?
I thought they were really cool, and they were really indicative of kind of how these things play out, and also how such small changes can make big differences, right? We saw in round number 1, Franklin had Gaston. That really mattered. We were an Amber Emerald deck. We didn't have the card advantage. We sort of got run over a little bit and then couldn't recover. In match number 2, we didn't have the early Gaston play, but we had all these Be Prepares, but didn't matter because we were Amethyst Emerald this time. So our annoying creatures with the card draw was able to actually push through and get those last few points across. And it's so cool to see how very similar decks and sometimes the same deck play out very differently in the way you choose to build and approach the matchups.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are done for round number 1. When we get round number 2 started, we'll be coming back for live coverage. Until then, enjoy some of these flashback videos from the Apex Gaming's new YouTube channel for Disney's Lorcana. We'll see you in just a few minutes. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the TCG Player Invitational Qualifier hosted by Apex Gaming. I'm Tandy, joined by Mason Clark. Say hi, Mason.
Hi, Mason.
We got 27 players in the room. We got one round in the books. Round 2 coming up in just a few minutes. We're going to be watching D'Artagnan Fell versus Devin Harrison. D'Artagnan is on the Stitch Blitz deck, a little bit more mid-rangey than what I've been playing, but it's Steel Amber Aggro with those early, Hook Duelists and Simba Bodyguards, as well as a powerful late game package with Big Tinkerbell to chew up the other aggressive decks. And he's going to be facing off against Devin Harrison's Amethyst Emerald aggro deck using a bunch of Genie on the Job, Flynn Riders, as well as those powerful card draw effects with Maleficent Sorceress and Friends on the other side. So that's the match we're going to be watching. Mason, what do you think so far?
I think it's been really fun, really interesting. Players are really loving Emerald, and Emerald was a color that I want to love, but I hadn't figured out a way to really get it to the point where I was happy playing it. And so it's really cool to see all these players and their different approaches to Emerald, and it's giving me ideas and makes me want to, get on Pixelborn and start gaming.
Yeah, I've been really big on Emerald myself. Genie on the Job, I think, might be my favorite card in the whole game. It's just such a powerful effect in those like jockeying for position matchups. It's a little bit weaker against decks that have a bunch of like come into play effects, like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, things like that. But in most situations, it's just going to be the best 6-drop. Comes down, interacts with your opponent in a functional way, has evasive, quest for 2, just really strong and a great reason to play Emerald, especially in an aggro deck.
I have to agree with that. And it's going to be really curious to see sort of the approach we saw, right? Like last round, we saw this Amethyst Emerald deck play. It seems to have some different cards in this one. So it's going to be really cool to see how those small choices have huge ramifications. Because with Amethyst in your deck, you see a lot of your deck. So you can play more 2 and 3 ofs and actually find those cards pretty consistently.
All right, well, these players are finishing up their mulligan. So let's go on and head down to the feature match area as we begin round number 2. These two players here, Dart especially is someone who we see quite a bit. Devin Harrison is no stranger to Apex Gaming either. Devin Harrison is going to be on your right, and he is going to be playing that Emerald Amethyst Beatdown, and D'Artagnan on the left going to be playing Steel Amber Aggro. It's going to be a fun matchup. We'll see who's on the play in just a moment. One thing I want to ask you, Mason, what do you think about just not shuffling after you put cards on the bottom for a mulligan?
I think it changes the game pretty dramatically, and I think it moves the value on cards. So I really like to shuffle. If we had a bunch of effects that search our deck, I'd maybe be in to not shuffle because Lord knows I've used enough of my life shuffling. But for now, I'm a pretty big fan of the way the mulligan works out, even if it is much stronger this way.
All right, players are underway. Steel Amber Aggro on the play. Dart going to lead off with the most powerful 1-drop. Lilo making a wish, but Devin Harrison has a nice Olaf here to challenge it. This character is a 1/3, really great at eating up those 1 willpower characters like Lilo and the Maleficents that have only 1 willpower. Back Dart's way. Go ahead.
One of the things that I want to really see about this matchup is, since both decks are aggro decks, battling for the board matters a lot. So having Olaf is actually great, right? Because Olaf gets to eat the Lilo when challenging. But we see cards like this Hook come down, which are really good at challenging back. So I'm curious to see sort of how this jockeying for position in the early game is going to lead to cascading effects, because both players won't have a ton of hard removal like we saw in round number 1 with the Amethyst Ruby control deck.
All right, back Devin Harrison's way. A second Olaf going to come down. This is a very defensive draw from Devin Harrison. And the Hook Forceful Duelist from Dart is going to keep those in check. So neither player really comfortable questing just yet. We're just jockeying for position. Lantern from Dart's going to put him ahead on ink. We'll see if he's able to utilize that in the next few turns. Here's a Smash going to take care of one of the Olafs. You have to be pretty happy if you're Harrison about that, yeah?
My gut is to say that, yeah, that's something that, signifies to me that Dart has a strong hand, because if we're willing to use a smash on a card like Olaf here, obviously Olaf's causing us some problems that are Lilo, but we could just not quest with Lilo for a little bit until we solve that problem. So that makes me think Dart has some card in hand that he feels is really strong. Maybe something like a Stitch Rockstar or something along those lines would be my guess if I was Devin.
Yeah, same. We are going to go ahead and quest with the Lilo up to 3, but the Olaf's going to be able to challenge it. Only gets 1 damage on it. Now, Forceful Duelist can eat the Olaf and get it off the table, but we'll see if Dart has a nice follow-up here. And he finds Stitch Rockstar! That was not in his hand, but he finds one, and now he's going to shift it onto Stitch New Dog. Devin Harrison going to need something like Mother Knows Best, or next turn might be pretty spicy.
Yeah, and that is exactly. It's so funny because from our perspective, we knew Dart drew it, but if I was Devin, I'd be like, yeah, obviously that was the one thing that made sense last turn was the smash. And now we're just in a really good spot here where we're gonna maybe just chain off the top and run over Devin, because in this matchup, like we talked about, there's not a ton of hard removal outside of Dart's deck with things like smash. So having the card draw and the removal puts Dart in a great position.
Yeah, Mother Knows Best is the easy answer to the Stitch Rockstar package here. It does come down relatively cheaply over the next few turns anyway, so it's not even the best answer. But Devin Harrison really needs something here, or else this Stitch Rockstar is going to get to untap and do some serious damage.
We're seeing Devin take a look at the hand. Looks like we have a Hans that we're eyeballing playing, maybe. Or Ink and a Tinkerbell. Or a Peter Pan, sorry.
Yeah, 3-cost pan. Here's Hans is going to start questing for 3 so it can challenge the Rockstar, but that's not the game Dart wants to play. Dart's going to go wide. We're going to start with the Lantern, and we're going to play a Stitch and draw a card. It's free.
If it's free, it's me.
All right, we also have Prince Eric. Looks like we drew a Simba as well, so Simba going to draw a card.
Simba's so big there, because now if we want to attack down this Stitch, it's going to be so much harder than it was going to be.
All right, we're going to play You Have Forgotten Me, and then we're also going to play an Eric. So this is going to cycle all these characters and draw a bunch of cards, and now we can still quest for 3, and Devin Harrison still doesn't have a clean way face up to deal with Stitch Rockstar or the other characters in play. We're going to go back Devin Harrison's way and see if he can do anything about this board.
Yeah, and we do have some friends from the other sides in our hand with a couple things that we can sing, so we can maybe find a way to get this all taken care of, but our top of our deck needs to really help out because this Simba is protecting the Stitch, so it's going to be pretty tough to clear the way.
All right, so Stitch Bodyguard here is protecting the characters here, but Hans can challenge it. It'll only put 2 damage on him, but that leaves Maleficent Sorceress to run into the baby Stitch just to do damage control. We're still 1 turn away at least from playing Genie on the job, but that could be a great way to get Stitch off the table next turn, but maybe another turn of Stitch Rockstar being active is a little too much to handle, huh?
Probably. Can you remind me, is Cusco whenever this creature is banished or whenever it is challenged, it banishes the other? Okay.
Challenge and banish is combo. So you can attack it with like a 2/3 and nothing will happen to it except regular damage, and then you can attack it with like a 2/2 and trade.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just curious if we could use Cusco to attack into the Stitch.
Nope.
Challenge the Stitch. Yeah. Only defensive there for the king.
No touchy. Very aggressive card.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to friends on the other side, but we're hard casting it. If I had to guess, that's going to be game over for Devin Harrison. We're going to spend our turn basically drawing 2 cards. I just don't think that's going to be good enough.
Yeah, it looks like Devin forgot about the bodyguard for a second because you saw Devin start to pick up the 2 cards as if to trade with the Stitch, which is probably why we used Friends on the other side with actually using our ink and not just singing it for free. And that is, like you mentioned, going to be a pretty big difference here. And we might just have to have this Maleficent trade off with something else on the board just so we don't fall behind, because Dart's threatening to get, 5 lore next turn and, probably, let's say, draw at least 2 more cards. So it's going to be a big problem here for Devin.
All right, let's see what he wants to do. Really in the tank here.
When these things happen to you in a tournament and you make a mistake, you got to remember what Hannah Montana said, and that's everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. All you can do now is work with the best plays you have, and with that information, make the choices you can to win the game.
I always forget that you're a baby.
I'm a bit-
Hannah Montana was like way after my time.
Wait, I guess I always forget that you're like good bit older than me and not a little bit older than me.
Ooh, big pickup for Dart here. Finds Rapunzel. So instead of questing with the Stitch Rockstar, could go after the Hans and then refresh that 3 damage and draw 3 cards. So really sick turn here potentially for Dart. And there it is, 3 damage. Don't forget to use the lantern. I always forget to use the lantern. It looks like Dart forgot to use the lantern too.
Yeah, it's so easy to just forget that one. But luckily we're drawing 3 cards, so we're a pretty big favorite to find a way to use the lantern.
Yep, and it looks like we do have another Prince Eric we can play and something to ink. So we're going to ink be our guest, and that plus the lantern is going to allow one of these 2 drops to come down and draw a card.
It looks like it's going to be a Prince Eric here. And this is one of the cool things about this Steel Amber deck, right? What we're seeing here is it is an aggressive deck like the other ones we've seen today, right? Like our 2 Amethyst and our Amber Emerald. But in general, we actually are playing a much more like kind of grindier game with the ability to pivot. And that ability to pivot is often the make or break things in sort of these matchups where both players are about playing to the board.
All right, here comes Genie on the job. We're going to bounce both of those stitches, the shift and the new dog, back to hand. And now if I'm Dart, I'm just pretty content just replaying it while questing with a bunch of stuff. The Pascal is currently unable to be challenged, but here's a big pickup. That's Tinker Bell, Big Tink, Giant Fairy. That thing that can come down and eat the Pascal if Dart wants it to, but may have more interest in just replaying that Stitch Rockstar and the Stitch or new dog from hand to go ahead and draw a card.
Yeah, it's such an interesting position because Dart can just have such a commanding board position with the big tank, but also can just take board control. And, it's not like Stitch is going to get worse every single turn. It's just you're going to get more mana, more ways to dump it. And in some ways, it's actually kind of in your best interest to wait a little bit and guarantee more value out of it so that Devin doesn't, Genie on the job it again. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Dart wants to play this turn.
All right, well, Dart is going to do damage control. We're going to go ahead and chew up the Pascal and do a damage to the Genie. That's going to allow us to do some questing here if we want. If we quest with Prince Eric, I think that actually ends up being kind of bad for us because the Genie gets to eat one for free. We're going to go ahead and play a Stitch New Dog off the Lantern and then gain at least 2 lore, but it looks like we're going to go for the full 4. Dart pushing towards the end game. We're at 14 lore. Devin Harrison still at 0.
I like this line from Dart. There's a lot of different ways to play that turn. For example, the Stitch was just a free redraw. But Dart's like, listen, I don't need a bunch of cards. I'm about to win the game.
Right.
Devin, you're the one who needs cards. Let's get this over with.
All right, Devin, handful of Cusco's. Looks like another Genie on the job, so may want to use that to bounce the Tinkerbell. But again, we're just in a tough spot. If you're Devin, his deck is very aggressive, low to the ground, but it looks like Dart out-aggroed him this game, and his deck able to refresh nicely with that Stitch Rockstar, and no good answer to it allowed Dart to just refuel, whereas Devin is just stuck with a bunch of 5-drops in hand.
Yeah, we saw Dart take an aggressive line with the smash on the Olaf that really sort of started all this, right? If we had that second Olaf, we could have controlled the board pretty well, and doing that into the Stitch Rockstar put Dart in a commanding position. If I'm Devin, honestly, one thing to really consider when you're playing these games is maybe packing it up, not showing your opponent cards, and saving a little bit of time, because Dart just has so many cards and so much lore on you.
All right, 4 costs. We're going to shift Stitch on Stitch. That's going to allow for 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 19 lore. So not quite enough, but we're going to be 1 shy. We can also potentially play some more characters here and draw some cards off the Stitch Rockstar.
Yeah, and Devin's packing it up. At 19 lore with 0 lore, you're just not going to actually be able to answer all of the cards every turn for the rest of the game. So Devin sees the writing on the wall, moves on.
Yeah, unlike Magic the Gathering, which we both play a bunch, just because you're low on life doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing or going to lose. But a lot of times in Lorcana, if you don't have early ways to challenge your opponent's characters while they're questing, every single character is essentially just like, exert it, do damage. And so when you get to late stages of the game where you're at 16 17, 18 lore, a single character, oftentimes off the top of the deck, can threaten lethal. And so if you don't have direct interaction, it's just going to be game over.
Yeah, this is why you see a lot of Magic players lean towards Ruby Amethyst because it is like the one color that has the most answers for everything. And a good way to think about this is, like Todd just mentioned, basically your creature always has unblockable on its first attack. And then at that point, your opponent can start interacting and blocking if you were to be a Magic player. But another big thing that's different about this game than games like Magic is life gain is actually kind of important if it's on a card that's already reasonable. Normally in games like that, you need to have a lot of life or the card needs to do a big thing. In this game, having like a 3-mana Aladdin, just actually being a 2/2 body and gaining you 1 life by removing their lore is huge in the early turns. Trades off with another character, gain you a life. That's a lot to gain.
No, for sure. That's one of the reasons why I wrote an article a little while ago called Goon Theory, and I posited that most decks, if not all decks, should play these one-cost 2/2 characters that are just kind of generics because they're resources, but they also double as protection from those aggressive starts via Lilo making a wish or those other aggressive one-drop cards. And it kind of picked up. Most players these days are playing goons in their deck as a way to defend against the Lilos because the Amber decks are so aggressive and so hard to beat once you fall on the back foot. But that's specifically due to the way that the lore resource is generated in this game. You just have to protect early because late game you just don't have the option to.
Yep. And we've seen players do that a lot, even from the early days. We saw Garrison Fort actually at one of the big first Lorcana tournaments came with Ruby Amethyst control with a very unique take of playing 8 of the 1 ink 2/2 ones. And that was a big difference from a lot of players and really made it so Garrison's aggressive matchups were not a problem.
All right, here's a 1/3 Olaf. This is actually a pretty reasonable one drop for aggressive decks. It doesn't seem like it because it only has 1 strength, but if you think about stats in Lorcana, less like you do in Magic, you realize that the lore generation is the thing that's most important. And then, secondly, it's willpower and then strength. Strength is only used to challenge other characters and to deal damage when other characters challenge you. So it's an inherently defensive ability.
I like big willpower, and I cannot lie. A lot of creatures just have a lot of characters have 2 strength, and it might be a 1/3 that quests for 1. And compare that to Lilo, which quests for 2 immediately. Lilo dies to everything. Olaf doesn't. And
Right.
if you have cards like Rapunzel in your deck, right? Obviously, when Devin's not going to have that, but that sort of combination can be really big and something that we've seen players lean into.
All right. Well, we are hot and heavy here. We got a Flynn Rider on turn 2 from Harrison, and Dart matches it with Simba Bodyguard. Nothing to protect, but a 2/3 body is quite strong here. We're going to go Questing for 3, and Devin Harrison all the way up to 4 lore already, and about to play a Cheshire Cat, it looks like.
Yeah, we also have our friends from the other side. Looks like we're eyeballing up. Oh,
No, we're just going to go Mother Knows Best. We're going to bounce our Simba and protect our Flynn Rider for an extra turn. So up to 4 lore, and now back Dart's way. We'll see if he wants to deploy the Simba or he has different plans. I saw a Lantern peeking out there, so could go Lantern for 2, play an Ink, and then still play the Simba while getting some acceleration going.
agreed. Another thing to note about this game compared to other games, as we do see Flynn Rider get smashed, is cards like Flynn Rider are actually pretty frustrating because you just don't have a ton of card advantage on each card. So losing a card and having to spend some time attacking it is actually sort of a huge deal in this game in comparison to other games where it's not that much of a problem. So bouncing that Simba is actually a huge tempo play, and if we didn't have something like Smash, the Flynn Rider probably would have gotten about 6 lore and majorly thrown off Dart's curve.
Yeah, the bounce spells are secretly busted. It's super good. So we have a draw 2 from Friends on the Other Side into Pascal. So we are churning. Let's get Pascal on the screen. Pascal is one of my favorite aggressive characters in the game. This 1-cost character, as long as you have another character on the table, it has evasive, which means that it's essentially a 1-cost evasive if you're an aggressive deck, because that's really hard to eliminate all characters from your side of the table if you're low to the ground.
Another reason why the high willpower on Olaf is so nice, right? Imagine this Simba, right? If you have something like Rafiki, it can combo in to kill the Olaf, but that's like the only thing, and so you know your Pascal is safe. So sort of a big thing here as Cusco does come down. I wanted to highlight the Lantern too, because the Lantern is such an interesting card from these Amber decks where it's kind of really good at either comboing off or playing a big thing early. And when you don't have a card like Stitch Rockstar, it kind of doesn't do very much except be an ink. But we
Right.
saw in game number one just how explosive it leans to, and so we see players lean to have the card in the deck over not.
If you are a mostly character driven deck, I think that Lantern is very similar to One Jump Ahead, and Sapphire is a color that's essentially built around ramping. And Lantern is essentially the same thing as One Jump Ahead, as long as your deck is just mono characters. But Stitch Rockstar leans into that very hard. Oh,
Yeah.
we can't have a Pascal. It's got evasive. If we have something of our own that grants evasive, that could be nice. But Pascal is protected. That's how it works.
Yeah, it's also it's awkward, right? Like normally the thing has evasive on the character. Pascal's is hiding in the rule text, much like a
Right.
chameleon. You have to look really hard to find the evasive.
All right. So it looks like we do have access to grab your sword. That plus an attack from Simba could clean up most of the side of Devon's table, leaving 2 damage on the Cusco, which allows the Simba to challenge it next turn, which effectively stems as much bleeding as you need.
I wonder if Dart wants to maybe develop the Hans though too, because then if you develop
Ah,
Hans with grab the sword, we can kind of ping everything down. That does mean Devon's going to go up to at least 12 lore this turn, but you can set up some really devastating turns if you put your Simba into the Olaf and have grab your sword, etc. Dart, we're going to kill Cusco, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Dart plays this out here because there's a lot of options, including Rapunzel to refuel after all that.
yeah, I'm down with either Hans or Rapunzel. Unfortunately, we can't play both. I like Rapunzel better, I think, because it just draws a card and it
Mhm.
allows you to potentially put another character onto the table this turn. Right now, it doesn't look like he's able to, but another lantern off the top. A third lantern's not what you want to see. It's just ink.
Yeah, and noticeably not ink for things like smash and grab your
All
sword,
right.
which we low key do want to play this turn if we could. But we do get to play it and play another
Yeah.
lantern. If we find Twitch Rockstar on a one drop, it is going to pay off in spades.
Okay. Gonna go back Devin Harrison's way. I like waiting on the grab your sword. It allows for a more devastating blow from the spell next turn. But Rafiki gonna blow up some of Dart's plans. It's gonna come down and eat the Simba straight up. Another Pascal gonna interplay too, and we're gonna go quest him. 3, 4, 5. Devin up to 12. And Dart here needs that grab your sword to clean things up.
Yeah, and this was one part of the nice part about waiting from Dart and developing, like we mentioned last turn. Now Devin has only one card in hand, and we're basically going to clear everything but this Cusco.
Yeah. Note Cusco doesn't have Death Touch proper. You need to banish the Cusco for it to die completely. It is going to go up to 3 damage on it, but every other character gets banished to the discard pile here, thanks to the powerful Grab Your Sword. And whenever we were playing with just the pre-constructed decks, there was one Grab Your sword in the Steel deck, and every time my friend drew it, it ruined my life.
Yeah, I played one of my first games with a friend, and we didn't really look at the decks, and I got one sided deal two to everything, and I was like, oh my goodness, and it just I have flashbacks to it every time it happens to me. I'm like, oh no. Speaking of oh no, another Cusco comes down.
Yeah, and Dart's really under the gun here. This has to trade the Rapunzel now, and then still going to be in some serious trouble thanks to the other Cusco that's in play.
Mm-hmm.
It does have the ward. We'll see if Dart has any way to challenge it.
Looks like we
See,
drew
ooh,
Stitch Rockstar.
yeah, that one doesn't straight up kill the Cusco, and I don't know that he can play Stitch Rockstar plus another thing this turn. I see a 7-drop hook in hand. That's a tough trade for Cusco, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, not losing is what matters here for Dart because you're so close to being in trouble. Every creature Devin plays is going to be a problem for the rest of the game. Your Stitch will bail you out. You just need to actually get to it, which is going to be the hard part. Oh, we're inking Stitch and playing Hans. I kind of like this too because now some of the early creatures with only one willpower will not be a problem, and you can actually maybe answer them before they quest, or combine with a grab the swords off the top to answer some of the 3 willpower things. We talked about how most of your creatures basically get in their damage at least one time for free, and why aggro decks can be so powerful. But this play, giving up a little bit of value, which I love, in order to maybe insulate ourselves from actually losing.
All right, so we play friends on the other side. We draw 2 cards. We're gonna quest for 3. That puts us to 18. Devin Harrison on the brink of taking game number 2. Gonna go ahead and ink a befuddle and play a Jasper. It only quests for 1, but when it does quest, it means your opponent's character can't quest. We'll see if Dart can clear this out. Here comes Hook. We're gonna trade for the Cusco.
We just drew another Hans, and that is actually so big because we're only going to go to 19 here for Devin, and now any 2 willpower things that get played will just be able to get picked off by the Hanses, and that could be the difference between winning and losing here for Darts.
The plural of Hans is Hans.
Hands.
Hands. Okay, no, the plural of Hans is hands. 2 hands.
Well, you're gonna catch these hands from him,
All right, we're gonna quest with 1 for Jasper. It's gonna put us up to 19, and then your Hans cannot quest, which means it can't deal the damage. And here's a Cusco. This should be game number 2 to Devin. We'll see if Dart has a miracle off the top, but it's very difficult thanks to the Cusco having ward. Here's Stitch Rockstar, but no way to chain it off, and Dart's gonna pack it in. Game number 2 goes to Devin.
Yep, and this is like right there is exactly why we're seeing so many of our aggressive decks lean towards Emerald, because cards like Cusco can be basically unstoppable, and really if you can protect your Cusco and get to it, you don't really have to get to 20, you have to get to 17 and just not die, right? It becomes
Right.
like a whole new change to the game, and also in a lot of ways guarantees you a lot of lore. So Cusco was a huge problem in that game, and we drew 3 of them, and not surprisingly, won the game pretty easily with those sort of draws, and that's why we play the Emerald.
All right, well, Mr. Director, if you could be so kind, I would love to get the card Cinderella Stouthearted on screen. This is a new card from Lorcana Chapter 2, Rise of the Floodborn, and Cinderella Stouthearted is specifically good at helping you challenge Cusco. While it does have ward, the Cinderella Stouthearted has a nice little ability that says, whenever you play a song, this character may challenge ready characters this turn. Or your characters may challenge ready characters this turn. So Cinderella Stouthearted is going to be a nice little way to fight back against these Cusco decks.
Yeah, that is going to be a big game changer. 7 ink 5/5/3. That's gonna be 5 strength, 5 willpower, 3 lore. That's kind of how we talk about it here in the community. That is huge. And then the resist 2, where your damage dealt with this character is reduced by 2, is a brand new mechanic from the Rise of the Floodborn, and really is going to matter on a card like this. It's going to be very hard to attack it down. And we talked about Maui last round. Like even Maui doesn't answer Cinderella, right? She lives. So I can't wait to see how that card changes up these dynamics, and might be something that, Dart might play as a tech 1 of, even because it is an inkable card, which even makes it more exciting.
Yeah. All right. These players are getting ready for game number 3. They are deciding mulligans. Dart's going to be on the play, so you have to imagine he's going to want an aggressive start. Something like Lilo sounds pretty good. Looks like I see one poking in the opening hand there. Going to put back a Hans. Looking for a Simba Bodyguard to protect, maybe.
Yeah, if you're Dart, your role in the matchup really is to get kind of the board control, use some of the removal you have that Devin doesn't to undo a Devin on a key turn, and just start putting Devin on the back foot instantly. Looks like Dart just wants only 1 card. Was happy with almost everything drawn.
I personally like keeping hands with just heavy ink. And Dart's build, while he is a Stitch Rockstar deck, he's not all in on it. My builds have been like Aerial Singer into draw 7s with a whole new world on top of the Stitch Rockstar package. So I just like never run out of stuff to do. But the danger of that is like your deck's very one-dimensional. You can't really catch up when you're behind. You can't really challenge your opponent's characters that well. But this build from Dart, again, way more mid-rangey and able to play more interactive, but choosing to keep aggressive starts, but also valuing the curve. All right, here we go. Hans is the ink. Here's Lilo making a wish. Any one drops for Devin. Something like Befuddle here could be nice, but Olaf in hand I see already. Looks decent as well.
Yeah, we saw this in game one. Just 1 ink, 1/3 is going to be a problem for this Lilo.
Yeah, needs a Simba bodyguard to stop it. Hook Forceful Duelist is the draw. Gonna go ahead and ink it. You're on the play. You have a Lilo. You want to be aggressive. Here's the bodyguard. We're gonna go questing for 2. The ideal start for Steel, Amber, Agro. And we'll see if Devin Harrison has anything to catch up. We need something like Megara here to challenge the Simba. We're gonna ink. And we're gonna Meg. This 1/3 gonna go chewing up the Simba, dealing 3 damage. This is the combination Olaf with Megara. This early start allows you to fight back against the powerful 2/3 bodyguard Simba.
This is why you see players have cards like Meg, because answering things like Simba in the early turn are make or break. If we couldn't kill that Simba there, it might have been really close to just Devin already being so far behind that you would need Dart to sort of fizzle on the draw step for a couple turns, which is not the place you want to be on the start of turn 3.
Yeah, that's so I don't know if you noticed, but Dart picks up Meg to read it. And in Magic, we have a little saying that when that happens, we go, "We got a reader."
Yeah. Dart was not ready for Devin's Mega, but Devin was definitely ready for Dart Simba.
Yeah, we're not. We need to read Giant Growth. We need to figure out what is this ability.
Devin just leans over to Dart, goes, "First time."
All right, the only turn 3 play here for Dart is a 1 cost Stitch new dog. So Devin Harrison, I believe, firmly in the driver's seat at this point, but Dart has a lot of really powerful late game stuff that can punish these early characters from Devin. So we'll see if Devin can refuel here, and he does with Maleficent Sorceress.
Yeah, I kind of wish Dart had quested. Both creatures would have traded with the Lilo, but your Lilo getting 4 lore is such a big part of the game. So I'm really interested to see how Dart wants to play with the Lilo, and maybe is planning to use it to tag team down a body, because, I imagine Devin would have traded something like Olaf for the Lilo, but your Lilo is just not getting much better. So it's going to be curious to see what Dart's plan is for this, because very clearly thought about his turn for a second and then decided to do it. As we do, shift Stitch Rockstar into play.
All right, this is a big turn for Dart, and we'll see if Devin has a bounce effect or removal effect to get it off the table. Dart here can go challenging something like Olaf if he wants, or the Megara, but that could leave him vulnerable to future challenges. If I were Dart, I would Lilo into the Meg, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. And now this Stitch Rockstar is looking pretty juicy. If Devin Harrison has another Megara, then he can use that to challenge. Oh, looks like we're going to undo. I don't like this play from Dart, man. I think he had it on the money. I think he just threw.
Yeah, so from Dart's perspective, right, it's like, oh, I'm going to force you to trade in, and that's a 2-for-1, right? And that is typically in card games really strong. However, Stitch Rockstar represents, almost always getting a 2-for-1 and potentially even more. So trading your Lilo is not really where you want to be, and is really counterintuitive to our turn 3 play. I was going to say, not attacking with the Lilo really showed some foresight for the Stitch Rockstar here, knowing Devin would want a quest, but doesn't really follow through there, and literally might be the moment when Dart goes back to watch this that, yeah, that's kind of where I lost the lead there, as Pascal does come down.
All right, let's do a short on takesies backsies. So in a game like Magic the Gathering, takesies backsies don't exist because both players have access to abilities on each other's turn. In this game, it's very loose on how you sequence everything. You can kind of do out of order sequencing like crazy, and you can change your mind as long as no game actions have been taken and that matter that change what's happened. And so while he initially said, "I'm going to trade with Lilo," he was able to essentially say, "Never mind, you can have that back. We'll just keep playing under this other decision that I made."
Yeah, we also don't know what the players are saying, right? Dart might have been like, yeah, I'm going to, and kind of does it there, but it's like, and then Devin moves the Meg in, right? So it's not exactly clear, and sometimes players do have some shortcuts, as we do see Genie on the job.
All right, and then Cusco's going to eat the Lilo, so Dart going to need some help here. He has Smash, but that can't target the Cusco. Genie plus Cusco is questing for 5 every turn. So good stuff here for Devin Harrison. That bounce effect on the Stitch Rockstar was quite strong.
Yeah, and Dart did get a bunch of lore off of that Lilo, which is putting Dart in a good position to maybe win. But we're in this really awkward position where Devin quests for so much lore so quickly that 11 is a lot, but it's only 2 turns of Devin questing with the characters in play, and we're I think pretty obviously going to go for it this turn. Yeah, as we jump up to 7 and figure out exactly what we're going to do as another Cusco comes down.
All right, this is getting scary for Dart. Even if he's able to put a bunch of stuff on the table this turn, 2 Cuscos and the Genie are all probably going to be able to quest next turn. The Tinkerbell off the top, not going to be enough for what's going on right now, but we can start off with a Forceful Duelist and maybe find a chain of 1 and 2 drops to flood the board.
Yeah, and if you're Dart, you notice Devin put the 7th ink down, which there's not much in these colors that you really want to do that, which implies to me that there is either some big card in our hand or some card draw that we are wanting to deploy on the next turn, and we're just wanting to make sure we can double character on the next turn. So Dart needs to know that stuff is coming.
All right, we're going to go ahead and play Tinkerbell Giant Fairy and deal 1 to all the opponent's characters. And now the question is, do you quest? If you quest for 3, then any characters that come in against a Stitch Rockstar are going to die since they all now have a damage on them. I think this is a pretty safe quest for 3. You go up to 14, your opponent has heavy incentive. I think trading is actively pretty bad because their characters trade so poorly. But I guess you're not even threatening lethal next turn, though, and Devin Harrison is. But Stitch, I mean, the Tinkerbell kind of solves that issue, I think.
Yeah,
It has
I think,
evasive. It has evasive. We need to stop that. That can't happen.
yeah, you cannot attack the Genie. It's evasive. That is. We'll get
Yeah, let's try to get over there quick, director, please.
Yeah, it looks like they caught it.
Cool.
Yeah, if you could attack the Genie, that would be the right play, I think. But this evasiveness is causing a problem. I do kind of agree that maybe we're supposed to just get our questing on. It is tempting just to kill Cusco, but I think killing Cusco with the amount of cards you have in hand might be too much of a losing play. And very similar to what we talked earlier about Dart, maybe forcing them to make the play that they want to have happen would have been a really good spot, but few missteps here, and Devin still has a lot of cards in hand.
Yeah, I mean that's the nature of Amethyst, though, right? Like you have friends on the other side to refresh. Dart has similar effects with Stitch Rockstar, but was never able to actually draw a card off Stitch Rockstar this game, or at least chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're gonna play a couple more characters. It looks like Dart's in a lot of trouble. This Tinkerbell can challenge the Cusco and then deal 2 to something, but without another Tinkerbell or Grab Your Sword, I don't know if it's enough.
We drew Grab Your Sword. Woo! Okay, so Dart does have a way to maybe get out of this. We just have to make sure how exactly do we want to play our cards.
So on the table, Grab Your Sword doesn't kill anything. Tinkerbell can only challenge Cusco right now. So we could go Grab Your Sword, deal 2 to everything. Cusco gets taken down by the Tink, and then Tink's ability does 2 to Hans. That leaves a 1 let's see, 1 willpower remaining on the Genie, 1 willpower remaining on the Tinkerbell, and they can quest for 4 next turn up to 16. So Dart's still going to be in a tough spot next turn.
Yeah, it is a situation where right now we are doing this so we can draw another Grab Your Sword and hope that is enough. And
another Tinkerbell is also good too because both these characters only have 1 willpower left.
Yep, Dart on a 6 outer.
Here's Maleficent. That's a good one though, as it refreshes itself. Another 3-drop. Friends on the other side. Let's draw 2. Hans and Cheshire Cat. We can ink the Hans and play Cheshire Cat, and I think that should be enough.
Yeah, I think that plays around the Grab the Sword and your Tinkerbell. But we'll have to see.
Oh, Lantern, no! That's gonna do it! Devin Harrison is gonna defeat D'Artagnan Fell 2-1, and Amethyst Emerald Agro is going to progress to 2-0. And we are getting dangerously close to seeing a new breakout deck. This Amethyst Emerald Aggro deck looks quite good. No just-in-times for the cheese, but we do have Friends on the other side, a lot of evasive characters and a lot of interaction via Genie and Mother Knows Best, and it's looking quite good.
It's been very impressive. I'm excited to see how it develops over the course of the rest of the day. And we're also seeing some of the problems maybe with trying to, we talked about like in the Steel Ember deck, you can have this issue where you kind of want to go two directions, which is typically pretty good, but the cards are so disparate, right? Things like Lantern are so good with with Stitch, but our Tinkerbell Smash Grab Your Swords are so not good with those cards. And I think maybe this deck has a lot of potential, but we need to make it a little less all-encompassing and lean into one direction a bit more and maybe be weaker in the other direction. Don't know which way to go, but very interesting deck still.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the coverage we have for round number 2. We're going to be taking a short break here. We have 27 players in the event, so each round is likely going to finish a little bit earlier than the 50 minutes. But until then, we're going to be back in just a few. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back for more live coverage of the first TCG Player Invitational Qualifier here at Apex Gaming. We'll be right back. Welcome back to live coverage of the TCG Player Invitational Qualifier hosted by Apex Gaming. Here in Caldwell, Ohio, I'm Tandy, joined by Mason Esports Clark. Say hi, Mason.
Hi, Mason.
We have a little bit of time before the next round starts. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at some of the new cards from Rise of the Floodborn. I don't want to hammer on the graphics too much. We're having a little bit of issues due to the website that we're using, but we're not going to make too big of a deal out of it. We're just going to read what we can. So this, we're going to be looking over some of the cards from Rise of the Floodborn, talking about how they're going to impact the constructed format for Lorcana. We're going to start with Cinderella Stout-Hearted. So 7 cost, 5/5, quest for 3. It has shift 5, so it can be played for 5 on top of another Cinderella. It has resist 2, which is a brand new ability that says damage dealt to this character is reduced by 2 from every single source that would deal damage to it. And then has an ability called the Singing Sword. It says whenever you play a song, this character may challenge ready characters this turn. What do you think about this card?
I'm very excited and very impressed by this card. So the first thing that jumps out to me is it is a 5/5 when it comes to its stats and 3 lore, which is a lot of lore. So when it comes time to win, it's actually going to win really quickly. And the 5 willpower, when combined with resist 2, is actually huge, right? We talk about Maui sort of cleaning everything up in Lorcana. Maui doesn't clear the Cinderella, and you need to have at least 3 strength to even deal damage to Cinderella. So you can't actually like chip shot down Cinderella like we've seen for some of these aggro decks. Like it's like, all right, trade. My Cusco does its thing, I win. That no longer happens with this card. Plus the shift 5 means it can come down so soon. I think this is going to be, I'd be surprised if not one of the strongest cards in the set, if not the actual strongest.
Yeah, I mean, we've only played with Resist for a short period of time. These cards that have been previewed thus far are on Pixelborn already, the fan-made digital client for Disney's Lorcana. And I actually got to play a good bit with these new cards myself the other day when I was recording a video with fellow member of Lost Boys, Harlan Fear, and Resist is a nice ability. It's very good.
Yeah, resist, correct me if I'm wrong. This also stops things like grab your sword, fire the cannon, right? So,
Yes.
like the steel mirror, this card's gonna be very impactful. Where before it's like, oh, grab your sword's back breaking. It's like, all right, well, you killed these other things, but my Cinderella didn't really get affected, or your smash only does 1 damage, right? That is a huge difference, especially in steel mirrors.
Yeah, let's check out another card. This one's going to be a Gaston Intellectual Powerhouse. This brand new Sapphire card costs 6, non-inkable. That's a big deal. It's a 4/4 that quests for 3 and has shift 4. There's only one other Gaston in the game right now, but you can shift onto the Ruby 2-cost Gaston, that 4/2 Reckless. And this one has an ability called Developed Brain. This is a nod to develop your brain. The 1-cost Sapphire card from Chapter 1 says when you play this character, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may put 1 into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So looks like Gaston got smart.
Yeah, I love this. These sort of Floodborn characters sometimes are like an alternative version of what's going on with the classic Disney character. It's a really cool thing. I'm excited to see what they do with that long term. And long term, all of the shift cards, I'm very interested in, right? Because right now, like you mentioned, Todd, we only know 1 Gaston. Let's assume there's a second Gaston in the set for the sake of argument, right? That's interesting and opens up a lot of doors. But as time goes on and we get more and more sets, we're going to get a lot of different Gastons, and how these interact really opens up a lot of things. And this card has a lot of lore attached to it. And when you play it, it sort of immediately replaces itself, right? And with the inherent nature of Lorcana, this card's basically going to always 2 for 1. And getting it down to play so early, a 4/4 on 4 is pretty good, especially if your Gaston did something earlier, like maybe pick off a Lilo, right? So I'm really excited to see sort of how the Gastons develop over time.
Yeah, I think that this is a really cool card, and one of the things that I want to note is how little card advantage that Sapphire has. And for those of you who are uninitiated, card advantage essentially just means the card you play essentially trades for itself and then +1. And Gaston, as a card itself, it's quite large, a 4/4, the quest for 3. And when it comes into play, it replaces itself not with just a random card draw, but one of the best of the 3 off the top of your deck. So I think this card's great.
Yeah. A lot of ways to think of it too is like if you've played with BR Guest, that's a card that a lot of players really liked. It's pretty strong. This is slightly worse BR Guest, but comes with a body attached. So it's like you see one less card, but you got a 4/4 instead of seeing one more card. And that is a really strong effect.
Yeah, and in card games, oftentimes the way that the nature of the new cards progresses is you start just like taking two existing cards and smushing them together and just like increasing their stats by 1 and their cost by 1 or 2 to compensate.
Yeah,
And
yes.
you having worked on Modern Horizons 3 for Magic the Gathering, you must know quite a bit about that type of card balancing thing. So how does this Gaston play in terms of like what would you expect from the developed brain? Like, how much do you think it like added to what the card would actually cost?
I think it added a lot. Yeah, so I worked on both Modern Horizons and the Assassin's Creed Universes Beyond, and this card sort of jumps out to me as like a very interesting one because Gaston is kind of a musclehead too originally, right? Which
Yeah.
implies in our first Gaston really likes to attack, but this one doesn't. So that's gonna be interesting with the shift implications because I imagine Gaston thematically is a card that you want to have be attacking a lot. So this one that's more advantage is big. But I will say this: let's say Gaston was exactly the same, but instead of look at the top 3, it was draw a card. That would still be good, and I would still be interested in Gaston. But the fact that I actually get to pick the best of the top 3 really makes it where this card is exciting. And we're seeing the difference between this and Robin Hood, right? Robin Hood is basically the card I just described to you, and it's good, and I like it, and I play it right now. But I'm not over the moon with Robin Hood, right? And so
Yeah.
Gaston really moves the needle on that.
Yeah, I'm similarly a fan of Robin Hood, but understand that it's not always draw a card. It's a little bit
Yeah.
harder than that.
I
The
also want to
one,
say one last thing, by the way, from a
yeah,
design standpoint. I think about this a lot. The Ravensburg people are very smart, and they seem to know the cards that are good and make them not inkable. So the fact that this Gaston is not inkable, where Robin Hood is, I believe, that sort of signals to me that Ravenburg thinks Gaston's pretty good. Let's not let them ink it, because if it was not very good, we could just let them ink the card and it probably wouldn't be that big a deal. So that's a good sign early in previews if you're looking at cards. It's like, wow, this 7-drop lets me ink it. Maybe that's a little worse than I think it is. Aladdin sort of being the outlier in this example.
yeah. I don't want to blow up your spot, but I do want to correct it before it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
The company is pronounced Ravensburger.
Oh,
They're
I'm so
they're
sorry.
European, I think. So,
Okay, that's my mistake.
but just so you know, let's
Yep.
move on to another card. We got Mickey Mouse friendly face. Oh, sorry, we have directors. Okay, never
Oh,
mind. We're gonna move into the matches because apparently, uh, okay,
okay.
we're gonna get to the feature matches in just a moment. We got one last card to show you, and we're gonna be looking at all of the Rise of the Floodborn cards between rounds as we, go throughout the day. But this is Mickey Mouse friendly face. This is an Amber 6 cost character. Well, we got it removed from the screen just so you know, Taryn.
Yeah, we have the MTG melee going on here. That way you can see the players. But it was a 6 mana 1/6 that quests for 3. And when you quest with this card, the next thing you play costs 3 less ink to play. And Todd, not to steal your thunder, because I know you're a Stitch Rockstar fan, I have to wonder if this card is just going to be great as maybe kind of your 5th Stitch Rockstar or something like that, or just also cheating out a bunch of really strong characters. And you mentioned getting to play with this card earlier. How was it for you in your video?
So Mickey Mouse friendly face, as you can see, 6 cost, 1/6 ink quest for 3. It says glad you're here. Whenever this character quests, you may pay 3 less for the next character you play this turn. Essentially, what this does is that it's a burst of ink in potentially a deck you're playing with Stitch Rockstar, where ink is the main holdout. Like it's the main resource that you're actually lacking. And I think that Mickey Mouse not only goes into maybe that style of deck, but also if you want to get a lot bigger with, Stitch Carefree Surfer, the 7-drop that draws 2 cards, being able to reduce that's cost by 3 ink is enormous. So I'm a big fan of this card, and so far it has looked really strong in testing.
Yeah, also Ruby Amber is the thing I'm really interested in. Hasn't really been a combination, but Mickey Mouse into Maleficent the Dragon, that's game. That's such a huge swing, and we see how impactful Maleficent is. Imagine that 3 turns sooner.
Yeah, so the thing about this card too that's great is that it activates while questing. And so you can kind of just, get it off without having to challenge your opponent's stuff. And you can, since it's not very good at challenging anyway. So I love cards that progress your lore while doing, a mild interaction with your opponent. And this is like taking that to a whole nother level because you're able to essentially double spell or play one giant spell ahead of curve. And that's just like not something that Amber has access to yet, but Mickey Mouse helps you do it, and a brand new card that we'll talk about later also does it. But the players are getting ready in the feature match area. So when we're ready, we're going to head on down there. We want to make sure that. Oh, do we have a frozen camera? Uh-oh.
Maybe these players are doing a art piece, like at the malls when they would do the dances
I
10 years
think
ago.
I think it's a Van Gogh. I think it's a
Yeah,
Banks.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Lorcana saw what happened with other card games in the Van Gogh crossover, and they're like, "All right, get a Banksy, get a Banksy." Then,
All right. Well, we're having some mild technical issues. We'll try to get those sorted here. Round number 3 is going to be coming your way in just a few minutes. We don't really know what we're going to be playing against yet, but we have seen some really cool decks thus far. And one thing that's kind of standing out to me that I don't actually see a ton is we are seeing a lot of Emerald. And Emerald's just like not a color on my radar and as far as competitive play is concerned.
yeah, definitely one that I think needed a little bit of help. And the players are showing like, "Hey, I'm subsidizing it with the other colors to sort of make that up." And it's really interesting. And a lot of ways, some of its highest rarity cards aren't even that super strong right now. Like the Emerald Beast, I think, is actually really strong in like maybe 5 years, but right now sort of lacking. And a lot of the other colors get their high rarity cards to really sort of subsidize them, right? Like Maleficent the Dragon, Maui, that kind of thing. And
Right.
this color just making do.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've pretty clearly hammered Emerald in terms of playability via being able to ink your stuff. So a lot of non-inkables, and that's been a big bottleneck for them, and one of the reasons why they're having trouble being competitive. But when you pair it with Friends on the Other Side, when you pair it with Just in Time, you get some really explosive starts with these powerful fives.
Yep. I wonder like even how many players would try to like lantern stuff too, right? Get your Cusco down turn earlier. All that stuff's pretty interesting. Because it does look like the players are mulliganing, so we got that taken care of, which was nice.
All right, let's head on down there and we'll talk about their decks while they're mulliganing and we'll talk about their potential mulligan decisions. We'll get the graphics updated for you in just a second as well. On your left, we're going to have Mike Wilson, and on your right, we're going to have Nicholas Roush. Nicholas Roush, I can see the opening hand. Looks like we are definitely Emerald. The other color, I'm not sure yet. I think it might be Sapphire. That'd be a nice little change of pace. Sapphire is the color combination that is essentially seeing the least play right now. The ramp effects are good, but they don't help you interact with your opponent's side of the table. And so oftentimes when you're ramping, you get caught without much on the table and you just get ran over.
Yeah, I played one of the early 1Ks and I played Sapphire Ruby. And I think it's actually really strong, except for the part where Ruby Amethyst is a big part of the format, and you just kind of get got there.
All right, looks like Nicholas Roush is playing Amber Steel, so we'll get that updated on the graphic in just a moment. We're going to lead off with a Captain Hook Forceful Duelist to challenge that Olaf. The 1-3 looking quite bad against the Captain Hook, honestly.
Yeah, Hook does a great job of controlling the board in the early game, and normally it's against like the 1/1s or whatever, and it eats a couple things. But against Olaf, it's a card you play because, like we talked about before, it technically gets to lore so often, but not in this case, as brooms get inked and played.
All right, Nicholas Roush, back your way. Let's see if you can play a 2-drop. I saw him ink a Prince Eric last turn, perhaps regretting it. Maybe he doesn't have a great play here. We'll see what he wants to do.
Has Simba and Aladdin as 2-drops, so might just want to develop a Simba here.
Yeah, I like Simba plus Quest. You can get punished by Rafiki pretty hard though, so it may be Simba, no bodyguard, and no Quest from the hook.
Yeah, I think I kind of like that the most if you're worried about Rafiki, because so far from Mike's side, you're not exactly sure what's going on, and it's pretty reasonable for it to be Amethyst Ruby control, right? Like Olaf is just a tech early goon type card to challenge. So I like that Nicholas here didn't bodyguard and is just sort of, probably been passing the turn.
All right, just to update on the left-hand side, we are playing Sapphire Amethyst, an archetype that you don't see very often. It looks like we're playing a pretty heavy support game with 3 copies of Philisates, Trainer of Heroes, to go alongside things like Grammatala to give them a little extra juice, as well as these 4 copies of Olaf, Friendly Snowman. So a nice little build from Mike Wilson. We'll see how it works here against Nicholas Roush's Amber Steel. Turn 3 here for Mike Wilson. We'll see what he got.
Yeah, my experience with Sapphire is that it's typically pretty good against these Amber Steel decks. And I'm interested to see how the Amethyst combines with that here, as we do have Mickey Mouse Detective just getting you another little ink there and setting up for a big mid-game play a little bit early.
Yeah, looking to deploy a 5-drop ahead of schedule, maybe get 6 and 7 online a turn early as well. Nicholas Roush here, under the gun, needs to deploy some serious pressure here or else he's going to be in some trouble. But here is Ariel Singer. We're going to look at the top 4, looking for a song to play. Maybe going to be singing it next turn. Doesn't look like we found a song. Going to put 4 on the bottom, but can still sing A Whole New World or something similar next turn off of the musical or off the Singer 5 ability.
Yeah, and you're noticing there, if you keep seeing it, Nicholas, what they're doing is they're playing their ink face up for the start of their turn. That way, everyone remembers that, hey, we did ink this turn, and then flipping it over after we make a play. A nice little way to sort of, make sure we're not accidentally double inking. It looks like Nicholas is doing a little bit of math, trying to figure out, should I be questing or not here? My instinct is to say not to quest just yet. You kind of know what your opponent's up to, and you might need to be trading off for something bigger, and letting them sort of pick off your Simba here would be kind of disastrous.
Picking off seems hard. I like questing with just Simba. I don't like questing with the Forceful Duelist because if things go wrong, like if Rafiki comes down, right, then your Forceful Duelist gets eaten for free. But Rafiki is going to get to eat Simba for free no matter what. And I think you just need to quest as the aggro deck. But, Nicholas Roush, if his hand has Grab Your Sword, that could be a reason not to be questing because it allows you to clear your opponent's stuff and then you start questing.
Yeah, I typically agree. I wonder if Nicholas's deck is just more mid-rangey. We have cards like Rapunzel in hand. So maybe the hope is that we can, use Simba to pick something off or maybe poke it a little bit and then draw 2 cards. Mike here in the tank trying to figure out exactly what to do. I'm also worried about Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer just having the broom trade off with the Simba. Yeah, as it comes here, and then you get a free ink, quote unquote, would have been a huge disastrous play. It's gonna be interesting to see how Nicholas wants to approach this turn.
Yeah, I mean, good point there. Because anytime that you quest, you are opening yourself up. You're becoming prone essentially to things that your opponent's doing. But if you're Mike Wilson here, like you have to start being afraid of Grab Your Sword eventually, right? The more cheap characters you put on the table, the more it just gets blown up.
Yeah, there is this really awkward line with Grab Your Sword where, currently all our things live, but they don't live through that in Tink, and that is coming dangerously soon.
All right, here is a big pickup. This is A Whole New World found off Ariel Singer, Spectacular Singers. So now Nicholas Roush can sing it if he wants, but has a heavy incentive to empty hand first. Mike Wilson is relatively low on resources, so giving him a big refresh could be a mistake.
Yeah, I actually played against your friend and fellow Lost Boy, Matt, at an event, and I was playing my Ruby Sapphire ramp deck, and I just put a bunch of mana into play, and he was playing Amber Sapphire, and just when he would play his Steel Sapphire, and when he would play his Whole New Worlds, they were just so much better for me. I imagine Mike's deck is going to do a similar thing where, if we get some Grandma Tolly, some more Detective Mickeys, this Whole New World is going to be a huge problem.
All right, looks like we're going to ink a 3-cost Tinkerbell and pass the turn. Going to go back Mike Wilson's way. Draws for turn. Oh, it does have a couple cards still in hand. They were set off to the side. I think it's important to make sure that when you are not playing the game, if you want to set your hand down, you do need to set it off very far away from your inkwell. Because your hand is hidden information and face down, if you put it on top of your inkwell, oftentimes it is impossible to figure out which of those cards are supposed to be in your hand. It comes up quite a bit more often than you would think. All right, Here is ink number 6 from Mike, and we're going to quest for one with the broom. uncaring if it dies in combat because it does just go back to hand. And now we're going to go back to Nicholas Roush.
Yeah, I wish we had done the broom play last turn, but now is the best time, since the last turn to have done it. So I like that Mike's reassessing and adjusting. No sunk cost fallacy here. As Nicholas is in a weird spot where, we can sing the whole new world, but you're only getting +2 cards, right? And Mike's getting +5 cards here. Now, Mike might like the cards in hand, but also, that Mike probably has a lot of bigger cards because we didn't do anything on 6 ink, which is a ton of ink. So Nicholas might be in a position here where you have to whole new world just to get rid of the big cards from Mike and hope it works out.
All right, we're going to go Eaton the Broom so that we can Rapunzel and draw 2 cards. This is a nice play from Nicholas Roush and keeps the velocity churning. Now I'm curious if Mike Wilson wants to quest with anything else. It might be Quest O'Clock.
Yeah, I like it. Now, basically, a whole new world is not going to do what it normally does and allow us to play those kind of games. We need to start getting stuff down. Mike has strong cards in the deck. Probably something like a Hades might be in hand. That would be I would be thinking about. Maybe an Ursula. So we need to start getting some lore in. Obviously, it is a low lore game at the moment, but that's going to change very quickly here. Some bigger cards.
All right, inks another 3-cost Tinkerbell. Going to play another Hook Forceful Duelist, and we'll see if any other questing is happening.
I think you gotta quest with at least one aerial. Like, just get a little sum on the board. You got the bodyguard. You're not even going to be singing that many songs this game.
All right,
Yeah.
got a quest with looks like both aerials. I think this is a much safer quest than the Hook Forceful Duelist, and looks like we're going to do that one too. Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Game 3.
Maybe Nicholas's thought is that my opponent is playing so patient that I want to bait this hook for the next hook to maybe answer something like Mickey Wayward Sorcerer. And so maybe, theoretically it's better to hold it, but my opponent's showing so much patience, I want to try and slip them up here. Mike, taking a think. I love pre-playing the whole turn.
All right. Big tapper. What you got? Here comes Hades. Going to blow up that Simba bodyguard. Puts it into the inkwell. And now Mickey going to go feasting. The 2/1/3s likely going to eat the Captain Hook in tandem. A lot of good board control here for Mike.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting spot where Mike getting control of the board, kind of putting himself in a good position, but also, needs to make sure that he doesn't force Nicholas to a whole new world before he really wants to have it happen, right? And I almost wonder if there was anything else besides Hades, if we could have played it to maybe bait it and have it be for a stronger card. But Mike has some plans and is 2 in the tournament, so clearly has a lot of experience with this deck and ready to go.
All right. Nicholas here, thumbing a hand. It looks pretty decent. The whole new world is like a good baseline if he just feels like we just need to reset. But I see a Blasting Cannons, Be Our Guest, another Rapunzel. We can put 3 damage on our own Rapunzel by attacking the Mickey for 1, and then we can heal 3 with Rapunzel and gain 3 more cards.
Yeah, I think that is going to be the play here because right now, we're in such a position where they're a little bit ahead on board, but this is a great way to sort of, hey, our opponent doesn't have a lot of lore. We can sort of dirtle around a little bit. They're not starting to quest. They're wanting to fight over the board, and I'll just go up 3 cards and figure it out from here. We might also see Nicholas try to do some whole new world decking action if the game goes long enough. Making your opponent draw 7 a bunch of times can sometimes do that if they have things like Detective Mickey, etc. So we'll see how this all plays out. Ooh, looks like we do have the shift hook in hand too. Are you a big Pirates of the Caribbean fan, Todd? Because you're about to fire some cannons.
I'm not, personally. I've seen like the first 2 or 3 movies, like, well over a decade ago or whenever they came out. I'm a big Legolas fan, Orlando Bloom, so here's Fire the Cannons, and Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer gonna go to the discard pile. The broom's no longer safe, and we're gonna use the rest of our characters to chew up the side of the board, and now Mike Wilson going to be the one with a mostly empty board.
Yeah. And Mike, not super in love to be in this spot, but if has some strong cards like maybe Robin Hood here to, put some good pressure on the board and redraw, just needs to basically put the foot on the gas and keep slamming cards and force Nicholas to play a whole new world. And right now we haven't really gotten that sort of foot on the gas moment yet, but we might also have some card draw with being Amethyst in our deck, as we are going to develop the brain for a little card selection.
Yeah, we're going to look at the top two. I thought an Ursula's Cauldron, not one you want to see at this stage in the game. That's usually pretty good early to make sure that your draw's kind of smoothed out. But since it doesn't replace itself, it's often negative card economy, and in this spot, you can't really afford that.
Yeah, you're really hoping that you're filtering your draws in such a way that it creates pseudo card advantage, right? You bought enough cards that are kind of early game cards. It's sort of, you squint a little bit, fudges the math, you got a card out of it. But Mike really in the tank here. It looks like Fringe from the other side's the other one, which is a pretty strong card. Maybe that is just the Cauldron.
All right, Mike, in the tank here on this Develop Your Brain, these Amethyst decks often take a while to win. So the longer he takes on this Develop Your Brain, the less time he's going to have at the end of the round to finish. We're still in game number 1. We're about 14 minutes deep. These players don't even have 5 lore, so the pace of play is going to need to increase if they want to finish this match.
Yeah. And I think from Nicholas's perspective, they're in a pretty good spot to start questing aggressively soon. So I think Mike, the other card must just be something that attacks the board. Maybe it's like a Rafiki or something, and he's considering, okay, do I want this Rafiki over card advantage so that I can control the board and use Hades to maybe take down this hook? Because Nicholas is going to start questing for 6 lore, and that's only 3 turns before it gets away. So we have to see here as some card was picked. I'm not exactly sure.
All right, it's probably going to come down this turn. We'll see. All right, we're going to tap 3. There comes the Friends on the other side. We're going to draw 2.
Yeah, and that was the card in Mike's hand that he took. So it has a bunch more options now. 3 mana, or 3 ink. Yeah, I feel like it just hasn't quite come together for Mike here. We had all this mana, and we had to Hades down a Simba. So we really need to start putting the pressure here. So this turn that we're using to develop needs to really matter as we ink a queen.
All right, he has the ability to attack with the Hades. Can also use it to sing, let it go if he wants. Gonna go ahead and play Bell Strange but Special. We have 8 ink on the table, looks like, so 2 more ink from Bell, and we'll be able to start questing for 5. That card is extremely powerful as a finisher. Big burn spell almost, and Hades does challenge the Captain Hook Duelist.
Yeah, in a lot of matchups, your game plan is just to quest with a Bell twice, and that is enough. If you get 2 quests off, it's like, all right, 10 lore, I can figure it out from here.
Yeah, exactly. One of the first games I played against Sapphire, my opponent played a Bell on 4, ramped again. Next turn, they were able to play Hades. And then the turn after that, they played another Bell. And I was like, how am I supposed to beat, gaining 10 lore at a time?
It is really ridiculous. And if you're Nicholas, you're low-key freaking out because Mike's at 8 lore, could have played a second lore this turn, chose not to off Bell. So
Right.
Those cards in hand are either really good or uninkable, and the uninkable cards are really good typically, as Grab Your Sword is found.
Yeah, finds Grab Your Sword off of that Aerial Singer, has multiple characters in play that can sing it for free. The 3/6 Hades here could get teamed up to kill with the Grab Your Sword and a couple of attacks. I'm not sure if that's what the play is going to be. Might want to just deploy some cheap characters and start questing a bit, getting some lore.
I like that Nicholas is thinking through everything before executing. Very important. Does have a be your guest as well to maybe find something. Probably better to use cards typically like be your guest once you're low on options, because then the games progress more and you know exactly what you're looking for. At this point, Nicholas isn't probably looking for any one particular card. So developing something like Aladdin would typically be better, but be your guest here, finds Tinkerbell and Stitch Rockstar.
All right, we're gonna grab the Tinkerbell, this big giant, or sorry, the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. One of the best cards you can have against an aggressive start from the opponents, but maybe not so good in this particular matchup, maybe or situation. But we'll see if he's able to leverage the 1 damage well over the next few turns. Gonna go ahead and play a Bodyguard tapped, and we're gonna go Queston for 4.
Yep. 5, right? So we'd be up to 8 there.
Oh, 5, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. There's one hiding out underneath there. But yeah, I mean, this is what you need to do as Nicholas. You have the cards. Mike is going to just dome you for a bunch here with the Tinkerbell in a second. Has a bunch of strong cards. We need to put Mike in a position where Mike has to be answering or force Mike to have sort of the perfect draw step. So it's a good play there, as it does look like maybe the players are confirming something with the Life Spotter about exactly what the lore is.
Yeah, earlier I saw Nicholas write down 4 when he only quested for 3, and I noted it to our director, so we're just making sure that it's all right. We're questing for 5 now, so we should be at 8, and so it should be 8-1.
Agreed. Yeah, if we just do what Nicholas had wrote down, then what you had said, we would end up in the same spot anyway, so it's all good.
All right, 8-1. Gonna go back Mike Wilson's way in just a moment.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Now we got that situated.
Calling oopsie poopsie in the biz.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's gross.
No, it's just a little oopsie poopsie.
Well, you could just say a whoopsie. That's way cleaner.
What's a whoopsie?
Literally and figuratively. A whoopsie?
Yeah.
That's a whoopsie!
You
Like
hit that note pretty well.
I played a lot of Mortal Kombat when I was a kid. All right, here's a attack for 3 that's going to kill the Simba. And we're going to play an Ursula. We're going to drain 1, draw a card.
And this Ursula threatens a lot of lore. We talked about how Mike is very soon here about to represent a ton of damage. And, you know, we have 8 here with the ability to play 2 off Bell, and we could maybe just 5 Nicholas.
Yeah, it's not really the spot you want to be in, though, because it's going to die immediately, right? But maybe not.
Yeah, it looks like Mike going to just control the board a little bit.
Yeah, going to challenge the aerial instead.
Maybe. Well, you know they have grabbed the sword and Big Tinkerbell. So
that's true. That's true. So we're going to have a big clear this turn, huh?
Yeah, I mean, the Hades is going to die. Assuming we do Sing Grab Your Sword, play Tinkerbell, everything but Ursula is going to die. We're going to quest for 4, go to 11, and we're in a pretty good spot because we have all those cards in hand, even if you don't know what they are. And we know they're all pretty good.
All right, so grab your sword. Going to deal 2 to the Bell, Strange but Special, 2 to the Hades, and then 6 cost Tinkerbell going to come down, and that is going to deal some damage. That Ursula should have 2 more damage on it from the Grab Your Sword, Mr. Director. Make sure we get that settled in just a minute if we can.
Yep. Yeah, Ursula got 3 willpower knocked on her. Luckily, Ursula, 2-8. Massive stat line. There they go.
All right, cool. As long as we fix it before a bunch of stuff happens, that's good. One of the cool things about Lorcana, Magic players probably hate this, but when it's your turn, your opponent doesn't do anything. They sometimes have like triggered abilities, but oftentimes they don't have decisions on your turn, which means that you can kind of just make all of your decisions that you're going to make for the turn in whatever order you want. And sometimes, though, that can be hard to rewind, but in this game, it's not so hard.
Yep. We're seeing Nicholas here doing a good job of controlling the board and getting lore up, which has been a deadly combination so far. These Rapunzels did a really, really strong job of just being a bunch of lore and being a threat as Jasmine gets played.
All right, so Jasmine, this is going to come down. It's going to heal some damage from the Ursula, and then it's going to Sing, Let It Go, and Big Tinkerbell going to go to the Inkwell. And now Mike Wilson, just 1 card left in hand. Ursula versus some princesses on the other side. We got 2 copies of Rapunzel and Ariel. Spectacular Singer. We'll see what Nicholas Roush wants to add to the table, but already has 5 lore up to 16 at the ready if that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, Mike, like I mentioned before, deck really good at punishing a whole new world, but Mike has not done a good job of putting Nicholas under any pressure. So Nicholas has just gotten to nickel and dime with these Rapunzels, getting 2 lore, 2 lore, 2 lore. Now this whole new world's never going to come down, and it went from a dead draw to sort of, oh, it doesn't really matter, and I can actually do that and maybe checkmate you. As you know, going up to 16 lore here means we have to answer both Rapunzels, and they're 1/5s, Todd.
Yeah, 5 willpower is extremely difficult for low strength characters to interact with. Mike Wilson under the gun.
We have Stitch
Hurt.
Rockstar too?
Yeah, this is bad. Didn't have a 1 or 2 drop to play to capitalize on it. A handful of big Tinkerbell, Smash, Whole New World. A common problem I see in these builds, but it looks like he has more than enough resources to get over the finish line here. And Mike Wilson likely going to be down a game and with his back against the wall on time because these players have just been playing at a glacial pace. It's possible that they don't even get to finish a game 3.
Yeah, I think Mike Wilson needs to pick it up. Unless you have in hand like Hades, Let It Go, and you can just like pick the things apart. But even then, if you do what I just talked about, your opponent still has you in a position where they're going to put you in check at 18 lore on the next turn. And that is going to be really hard to stop unless you just draw perfect and they never draw anything that quests ever again. So it might just be best to move on with our day here and try and win game number 2 and 3.
All right, well, here's a Maleficent. We're going to draw a card. We're going to ink. We're going to play Hades. That's going to banish the Stitch Rockstar. And can we deal with one of these Rapunzels to not die? That's 2, 4. Looks like only 4 damage, so not even quite enough. So these Rapunzels are threatening lethal, and Mike Wilson going to pack it in. Game number 1 goes to Nicholas Roush.
Yeah, it seems like Mike forgot that Rapunzel was a 1/5 instead of a 1/4, and so is making plays that turn to try and give themselves a 1-outer. But, unfortunately, not the situation, and might come back to bite them if we do not, have a lightning fast game number 2 here from these players. But I think the matchup's just going to go a little bit slower unless we see a bunch of one jump ahead Grandma Tallies, Detective Mickeys from the early turn.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can finish games pretty quickly in Lorcana as long as you physically play the game quickly. You can play the first 5 turns within 30 seconds and both players know what they're doing and they're just aware of how the engine interacts. But this is a brand new game, okay? These players are likely playing some of these cards for the very first time. They're likely playing against some of these opposing cards for the very first time. It takes a lot, to really understand every single card in a game. With that said, we have asked Mike to play a little bit faster. We do expect these players to play at such a pace where they can finish 3 games in 50 minutes. This is a newer tournament guidelines that we're going off of, so we're kind of just working with what we got. But here we're going to step in for game number 2. Mike Wilson's going to be on the play with that Amethyst Sapphire deck, and we'll see if he can play this game in quickly enough to finish a 3-game set.
Well, say this, Mike's drawing 6 new cards, so if Mike has any mulligan heuristics like I do with my Sapphire decks, it's I keep ramp spells and put everything else back. If it doesn't give me an extra ink, I don't want it in the early turns.
Nice. I like that. Now, both players are going to be shuffling here after they put cards on the bottom. This is the mulligan rules for Disney's Lorcana. I'm going to lobby for them to remove that, though. I think just putting the cards on the bottom is good enough. We already do that in Magic, and there's like very little shuffling in some of the formats, and it just doesn't matter. And it just adds like an extra 30 seconds to each game for basically no reason, in my opinion. But
I think there's a reason, but I think we just disagree. As
that's
we are
fine.
going to see, yeah.
Look, putting your bomber on the bottom and only having one of it does feel bad. I'm not going to argue with you on that. That's definitely the case. But adding a minute of time to every single round of shuffling that is after shuffling, drawing 7, mulliganing, shuffling again just feels very, very backwards to me.
Fair enough.
All right. 1 drop here from Nicholas Roush. We start with a Stitch, new dog. We're going to go back Mike Wilson's way and see if he has a 2 drop that can match. Going to ink Wayward Sorcerer. And here's Grandma Tala. Doesn't challenge on its own, but if it does get banished, it does go to the Inkwell, so it's a little bit of a ramp effect, very similar to Sakura Tribe Elder, if for those Magic players out there.
Mhm. Yeah, it's sort of a slow one jump ahead for blue, but gives you some redundancy, right? If you have like a couple Grandma Tallies and a bunch of one jump aheads, your turn 4 and 5 are pretty often very strong. And it doesn't take that much work because there aren't a ton of actual 4-drops that you want to play with one jump ahead besides Bell. As Simba is going to get bodyguarded, it seems. Looks like Nicholas maybe not used to playing against Sapphire Amethyst as well, which is adding to this, like we mentioned before, an unusual color combination. So that's going to add a little bit to the, pace of play where we need to double check a couple things like, wait, is there something that could punish me here? That kind of thought does come up a lot in players' heads.
Yeah, unfortunately, the support mechanic only works when the character quests, and so like a Philocades here, for example, doesn't allow Grandma Tala to trade up. But that's why cards like Megara out of Emerald are so good. But here's another ramp effect: Mickey Mouse Detective gonna put Mike all the way up to 5, and we're just on turn number 3. So next turn has access to a potential 6-cost spell 2 turns ahead of schedule.
Yeah, something like Robin Hood here would be huge. Playing all these cards, you're also low-handed, so getting a redraw,
Right.
very nice. We're also setting up, maybe for something like a Dr. Facilier or any other big Amethyst cards that you want to play along with all this extra ink.
All right, we're gonna quest for 2. Nicholas Roush up to 3 lore, and looks like a grip full of the goods.
Agreed.
See what he wants to deploy here.
Looks like a little bit of, like what is going to be coming down here? What do I want to play around? And looks like another Stitch. That's all we got.
Yeah, not the best follow up there for the turn 2 Simba Bodyguard, but another 1-drop is still another 1-drop. You can see Nicholas Roush actually has blasting cannons in hand. This is a card you often don't see in steel decks because it's not inkable, and it doesn't pair well with the engine card Stitch Rockstar. You want most of your cards that are interactive to be character driven, like Prince Eric and Captain Hook Forceful Duelist, because they refresh themselves when you have a Stitch Rockstar on the table already.
Yeah, and Mike here taking a huge risk here. We got to clear this Simba because these stitches and stuff could become a problem. But if Rapunzel comes off the top for Nicholas, we're going to get a huge sort of swing there. As Jasmine, not quite Rapunzel, but does heal too.
Yeah, and the Mickey Mouse going to reset its willpower here. And Jasmine, a reasonable body herself. Just a nice card here for Mike Wilson, but will it be enough? Here is a shift. Stitch Rockstar comes down onto one of the Stitch loyal dogs or new dogs, and we'll see if Mike Wilson has a way to take it off the field.
Would you say Stitch has that dog in him?
I would not.
Yeah, me neither. That'd be really cringe. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It is interesting, right? From a gameplay perspective, do you want to attack down the Detective Mickey and then just quest with your other 2 cards? That Bodyguard Simba will protect your Stitch. Obviously, your Stitch takes 1 here, but, Mickey Mouse is looking to just answer the Simba at some point. Anyways, besides that, also generating a little bit of lore could matter. So it's definitely a close spot here, and a lot of thinking ahead is going to need to happen because next turn, Mike has Hades, and we saw Mike plays 4 Hades, 4 Let It Goes, right? It was just slamming those in game number 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out here.
Yeah, I'm in favor of just questing. 3 is a ton for this deck, and using that to eat a Mickey Mouse. I think the Mickey Mouse, picking off the Simba next turn, it obviously has repercussions later down the line. But no matter how you go about this turn, if you quest at all with Simba, it's going to die because either the Jasmine's going to kill it or the Mickey Mouse is going to kill it. And I just think that you're much better off just getting 3 lore off the Simba. Now, I wouldn't mind maybe both of the smaller characters. No, never mind. I changed my mind.
Yeah, I don't hate just this if you're trying to play towards Rapunzel. I do think I like where you're at more and what you're saying about just sort of doing it. But I do think that I would understand where Nicholas is coming from here with, maybe my hand isn't exactly what I want. I need a card like Rapunzel. They're just going to kill Stitch, so it's never going to do the thing. And yeah, this is why killing cards like Mickey matters so much. A friend from the other side, Mickey is just getting to give you 3 more ink in a deck that is very ink heavy and needs all the ink to function. So
Yeah, there's a lot of good utility 3 drops in the game, and they are almost all used to sing Friends on the Other Side. But here comes the 7 drop Hades. It's going to put 2 different stitches into the inkwell. When you shift, both cards are still technically on the table. So when Hades does banish it to the inkwell, it gets both. So a big ramp effect for Nicholas Rausch now. We'll see if he can leverage that extra ink.
Yeah, we drew the Rapunzel, so not using the Simba is going to pay off there, but I can't help but think we needed to attack down that Mickey last turn. But we'll see how it plays out as we draw 2.
I don't know why Jasmine didn't eat Simba.
Simba
Mickey.
didn't do anything.
Oh, right. It was not vulnerable. Good call.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Played towards our out of Rapunzel and then drew our out. So
Yeah,
tight play
Rapunzel, a
there.
pretty nice one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, handful of cards now after the Rapunzel refresh 2. I see 2 cost Aladdin, the quest for 2. Relatively weak stats. It's a 2/1/2, but not very many 2 cost cards quest for 2 lore. So Aladdin somewhat desirable in a deck that plays Stitch Rockstar.
Mm-hmm. Nicholas is really feeling it too because Mike has so many cards in hand. It'd be one thing if this was the board and Mike was out of cards in hand, right? If just we're on top deck mode, then okay, we can start to pull it together. It might be really easy. Here it's like, well, what do I do? These cards are all so big, and I do have these, uh, deal twos and Tinkerbells, but I don't know. The grab your swords are going to need to like line up really well if we're going to win here.
Yeah, there's a lot of punishes from Nicholas Rauch's side for entering in combat, but you usually want to enter into combat on your own terms, so it's a lot more controllable. So you can do like 2 here, 1 here, 1 here, and then use your grab your sword to clean up more than one character at a time.
Yep. As we do see Mike play the queen, which is a nice, and magic mirror. So you're seeing some of the advantages of being a sapphire amethyst deck, right? You have all
Right.
this ink all the time and you have it early. So we get to really do a lot of stuff that ruby amethyst does. But, you just don't have as many mass answers to creatures.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and quest for 2, 4, 5. Mike Wilson gonna go up to, I believe, 7 lore. And we're gonna go back Nicholas Rausch's way, and he's got some uphill battling to do, but a board full of characters. Let's see if he can punish. Grab your sword's a nice one here.
Yeah, we also just drew a Rapunzel. So no matter what, we could set up Rapunzel, attack Hades, play Rapunzel, draw 3. I don't know if we actually want to draw 3 right now. We might want to use our mana in a more efficient way, but that is on the table and something Nicholas has to consider.
All right, taps 5. We're gonna play grab your sword. Deals 2 to everything on the opponent's side of the table, but nothing is dead just yet. I imagine we'll be able to do some trading.
Yeah, and let's see how Nicholas wants to go about this. We do have a Fire the Cannons and a Lilo in hand. So we might be able to, use this Fire the Cannons and our Aladdin Stitch, take down Hades, Simba to clear out the Jasmine, and then have, Rapunzel hit down Mickey. And then it's just the Queen versus, but Mike does have the ability to draw 3 cards next turn if he wants it. So Nicholas needs to make sure to navigate this turn perfectly. As you see the head nod, he's like, all right, I figured it out. Time to start attacking. This is also what you were talking about too, right? You can play a turn quickly. Once you know everything, your opponent doesn't have to confirm anything with you. It just happens. So you get to kind of plan your whole turn. And if you're pretty efficient at doing that, which is something you should be doing in all card games, sort of thinking through your turn executing, it pays off in spades in this game.
Right. All right, back Mike Wilson's way after a big old board clear. The grab your sword plus blasting cannons plus a big attack, and now Mike Wilson left with just the queen and a magic mirror, but a great place to be in an attrition battle. You have multiple ways to refresh. We'll see if he has any way to help clean up Mike or Nicholas Rausch's side of the board before that Rapunzel number 2 comes down and gives them a few more cards. All right, up to 8 ink. See what we can do.
It is interesting too from Mike's side. Will he play around second Rapunzel and have his queen kill the Rapunzel? Nicholas has drawn a fair number of cards, and that's such a huge way for him to get back. Sorry,
Has to attack the bodyguard instead. Unfortunately for Mike, we'll see if he has a way to clear the Rapunzel here. No, just Mickey Mouse, Wayward Sorcerer. And now we're back Nicholas's way. That Rapunzel is going to give him some extra help here.
And it's funny too, Nicholas has only inked 4 cards this game. As playing off 6 ink because Mike inked the Stitch Rockstar. And so that's
Yeah.
part of why Nicholas has so many resources. If you're watching, you're like, how's this happening? Rapunzel plus your opponent giving you 2 more ink really changes the dynamic of the game.
Yeah, if you want to know why Dragonfire is not inkable, but Let It Go is inkable, is because of stuff like that. It comes with a significant drawback, putting your opponent's characters into their inkwell.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really shows how strong they thought Let It Go was, that it's both inkable and singable. Like, obviously, the name Let It Go makes you do a sing, but you could have named it differently, right? So they thought that card had some serious drawbacks, so they were going to let you do that sort of thing.
All right, we're gonna quest for 2, draw some cards, trade off with the queen, and play 2 1-cost Lilos. The quest for 2. Nicholas Roush firmly in the driver's seat. We'll see if Mike Wilson can come back. We have a lot of access to ink and a few extra cards with Magic Mirror, but the queen is now gone.
I wonder if Mike has the stopwatch as a way to maybe, haste up something like a Hades and have it clear 2 things.
Yeah, White Rabbit's Pocket Watch is quite powerful in the Amethyst decks, giving you the ability to rush down your opponent's characters with things that wouldn't normally have rush. It's quite brutal with Aladdin Heroic Outlaw in the Ruby Amethyst control deck, but this Ruby Sapphire deck maybe doesn't use it as well.
Yep. And this is also one of the big differences. Mike's deck has been less of like a traditional ramp deck and more of a controlling deck with the ability to put some big bodies on board. And we're noticing the difference between having mass answers versus not, right? Nicholas here has these Lilos, which are representing to give him 4 lore and could put him at 15 this turn, which is really, really close to just winning the game, and would force Mike's hand to answer those cards instead of the Rapunzel. So this go wide plan is very effective against Sapphire Amethyst.
Yeah, I like this. So we're going to go up to 15 lore, and we're going to play Stitch Rockstar, and we kind of got you coming and going, right? If you go after my characters that are questing, I'm going to get to untap with Stitch Rockstar. If you ignore them, you're straight up dead. And if you kill Stitch Rockstar, well, I got enough lore on the table where I might be able to quest you out next turn.
Yeah, we need Hades or Let It Go this turn. And if we do that and attack down the Lilos, our opponent still goes to 19, so we have to beat every single creature for the rest of the game. And just like game 1, Rapunzels are 1/5s. It's just really hard for Mike's deck with low strength cards to attack in. And we mentioned this earlier, why we love high willpower. It's because things like this, they need to be able to stick around and do stuff, and it causes real problems.
Yeah, unfortunately for Mike, just not drawing any copies of Philsades early in the game to allow some of his smaller characters to trade. But here we do have an answer for the Stitch Rockstar. That's Let It Go, putting it into the inkwell. But these 2 Rapunzels are going to be putting Nick up to 19 next turn. So going to need to clear everything for the rest of the game in order to not be dead.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, drawing the smash there. I think we still have that fire the cannon. That might actually just be game because we can just clear out the Mickey and then we can't kill the Rapunzels. Now, I might have missed all the hand, but we definitely have a smash. So that will clear the Mickey.
All right, Nick going through some math here, trying to figure out exactly how he can lose because he's very firmly in the driver's seat. It's his game to lose. This is Captain Hook having happy thoughts, so he's flying. And we're going to play Be Our Guest as Ink and smash on something. Looks like Mickey Mouse going down. And here we're going to quest for 4. Goes Roush up to 19. Mike Wilson on the back foot. Door's about to close. What do you got?
Mike, this magic mirror has to pay off, and we have to have the right card. Develop your brain. All right, a relook for only 1 ink. But not looking like the face of someone who's happy. And yeah,
Mike
Nicholas is going to move on to 3-0.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
3-0 is a great start. This is